Hello.
God.
And welcome to the event you've all been waiting for. It's the Handies. Phil, what was that reaction about? You didn't like the energy I brought?
Like the really enthusiastic version of like the kneed kid from The Simpsons, complete with breaking voice. It was a surprise. I'm not gonna lie.
Welcome to the 2022 Handies. That's right. We are giving out 2022 Handies, and this year, folks, that isn't just for the hand job joke. It actually feels like we have 2022 nominees to get through. An extra jam-packed, completely loaded schedule of awards, many of which are interesting, a few of which are boring, which is why we put them right at the top, and a few others of which have just been added this year by you, our listeners and devoted fans. And a couple of a couple of awards from previous years that were not included as well, that I'm sure some will make a comeback with better contenders in future. Phil, describe to me the atmosphere, the excitement that you are feeling right now on the cusp of such a momentous event.
Mostly I'm just bracing myself for a fact that we're going to have to do so many of these, and the inevitable feeling that I will have. And tomorrow I suddenly realize that we've forgotten something insane.
Oh,
huge.
yeah. We've forgotten a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely guaranteed. I pretend to cough before, but I'm actually coughing. Phil, you're still coughing.
And?
This is going to be the sickest awards show ever.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like a... I don't mean sick like Tony Hawk Pro Skater kind of sick. I mean, we're very ill. All right. Well, I think like last year when I was editing, I was like, how did we spend 8 minutes talking before we did the first award? I don't know what the hell we were doing. We're not doing it this year. We're diving in. So whatever the music is, it should be happening any moment now. Any moment now. The music will kick in.
This isn't my cue to sing, is it?
If you had,
I'm not doing that.
if you had, I would have let you go on as long as you desired. When I was sick, I did the Lou Rawls singing. Can you do a good Lou Rawls?
Who's this?
You'll never find, boom, 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 as long as you live. You know that one?
Oh, I guess now we know how we got to 8 minutes.
Someone who loves you. Anyway, here's the generic boring awards. Go.
Plato, Socrates, Shakespeare, rock with me. The G and the key philosophy. They couldn't put it down this properly. You could be anything you want to be. As for me, I'm a G and the key. That's a white uniform, not a white tee. No, not a white tee.
How am I doing first one?
Boy, we should have really decided, perhaps in the previous 5 years, how we were going to do these.
Whatever. We're always like, next year we're gonna be organized. Then we get to it and we spend like 3 hours before the show starts trying to remember everything.
I did add some this week, but I realized only when we started. Not nearly enough. It was not complete. So yeah, you do the first one, Phil. The first of the generic boring awards. Oh, maybe this was part of the 8 minutes. Just to remind you, we do generic boring awards, best fight, yada, 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 the ones that everyone does. Then we do our weird, unique awards. And then finally, to round things out, we finish with the strategy section. Our awards, which, are, some of them are very silly, but also genuinely honor, or shit on fighters who either did get better, fought well, or vice versa, the opposite. Okay, so with the generic awards, the first one is Fighter of the Year. Phil, the nominees, please.
Alexander Volkanovski, Alexander Usyk, Alex Pereira, and maybe I think Juan Francisco Estrada.
Yeah. I think this is going to be the only place in the entire show where any boxers show up.
There's one other place where at least one of them will turn up. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a tricky one for everyone, right? Because there isn't really a whole lot of, there isn't like a single standout.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be like, Pereira 100%, like in terms of breaking out, it's him.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of going from nowhere to somewhere.
Yep.
But then, you're also like, this is someone that he's beaten twice before, and, somewhat fortunate matchmaking, and it doesn't exactly feel like he's come out of nowhere. It was, and nor has he kind of racked up amazing, performances.
Yeah.
I guess another one would be like Islam Makhachev.
Islam Makhachev, for sure, should perhaps be a top contender in this category.
Yeah.
This is good, too, when we remember nominees as we go, starting with the very first fucking category.
Yeah. I mean, but again, Bobby Green and Chucky Olives are both good wins. Chucky Olives obviously being a great one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of it. And then,
yeah, Chimaev, flamed out this year. Or got too weird. Yeah, there are other people who should have been in the conversation. Like maybe Arnold Allen should have been in the conversation, but one of his fights ended in an injury.
I mean, I think it pretty much has to be Volkanovski.
I agree.
Because I think of his two fights, the Sung Jung fight has been somewhat retroactively labeled as something where, this was just an absolute squash match waiting to happen. I didn't really think of it as being that.
No, I thought
it was a fight where I was definitely favoring Volkanovski.
Of course.
Certainly one where Chan Sung Jung had some stuff that he could make work. Instead, it was an utter thrashing, and it made Korean Zombie look like he didn't belong in there at all. But then it was the fact that Volkanovski did pretty much the same thing to Max Holloway and made him look like he didn't belong in there at all.
Yeah. This is a fighter who was already, in my opinion, the clear pound-for-pound number one, who completely reached a new level this year. And that even though there are only two fights, one was against a very good fighter whom no one has ever done that to Korean Zombie before. And then the other one was, like Pereira Adesanya, the third of a series of fights, but it was such a culmination of the journey Volkanovski has been on as a fighter over the course of that series. Because, once again, in even more so than Korean Zombie, no one has ever done that to Max Holloway. I mean, that, I think, is a legendary victory.
That is one of the most comprehensive thrashings of a pound-for-pound all-time great fighter that you are ever going to see. Start
of the year, I was saying Volk's pound-for-pound number one, Max Holloway's number two. And to show that kind of gulf between two fighters who have proven to be more or less on the same level in two previous fights, that to me is enough to warrant Fighter of the Year.
Absolutely. And simply one of the most staggering. I mean, it was only two fights, but one of them was one of the most staggering performances we've ever seen in a title fight.
Yeah, possibly the best striking performance I've ever seen in MMA. Quite possibly.
Yeah, I'm to sign off on it.
Okay. Well, Fighter of the Year. Big Volk. Which brings us to KO of the Year. And I will read the nominees before we discuss. We have, of course, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. We have Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker, which just scratches that aesthetic itch. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson. We had Demetrius Johnson over Adriano Moraes. And we had Alex Caceres just a couple weeks ago, head-kicking Julian Erosa. What do you think?
I think there's the obvious outcome in terms of like the shock factor and the shot heard round the world kind of effect. The obvious front runner is Edwards Usman.
Yeah.
I do have some bias, I think, towards Mighty Mouse over Moraes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a prettier finishing sequence. I think it looks cool. It's Mighty Mouse getting his revenge from a previous like brutal KO that was into him. I think those are the two really. I mean, Chandler Ferguson, okay, it looks awesome. It's meaningful, but it was also one of those fights where everyone was like, Tony Ferguson is really bad now.
Yeah.
And the only thing which makes it not a, absolute first ballot Hall of Famer, like, old man destroying Mackenzie Award kind of thing is that Ferguson looked shockingly good and or Chandler looked shockingly bad, before it happened. But, really violent. Sarah Rosa, super cool, kind of janky, but doesn't really have the meaning behind it.
Yeah, and sort of a weird. We're gonna have an award later, which honors fights where like both fighters just sort of met their fates. That was kind of only one fighter meeting his fate. Like that is how Julian Erosa always loses, but there's an extra shock factor in that it was Alex Caceres doing it, and with a really strange, like aesthetically unique strike. That weird Stephen Thompson style head kick. I think I concur with you, though, Phil. I think the Demetrius Johnson-Adriano Moraes is just the coolest knockout I've seen all year. There's the added oomph.
Yeah, super meaningful.
Yeah, there's the added oomph that, being super meaningful for Demetrius, reasserting himself over this guy who had knocked him out previously, getting his revenge, but also just the sequence. I mean, we have a head movement into counter shot beginning the sequence, and then somehow at Demetrius Johnson's speed, but with all the casualness of Jacare walking in to finish Derek Brunson. Just Demetrius Johnson just like walking up after the man who's barely remaining conscious and landing a picture perfect flying knee, which ends with him getting his ultimate revenge by teabagging Moraes as he falls unconscious. So, and a walk-off too. I mean, a walk-off KO is always going to be, that's going to jump you up a few spots if you just know you finished the fight. And are cool.
Yeah, it's the part where he's chasing him down in slow motion and he's just like taking little tiny steps the whole time. And he's just you can see him like looking at him.
Yeah.
Like, it's like watching a bird in slow motion or something. He's just like looking at him. Is it time? Is it time? Is it time? Is it time? Should I hit him now? No. Now.
It's like when you see there's that slow motion video of a cheetah like chasing after a piece of bait being dragged by like a car. And it's like in slow motion, its head, even though it's running at 65 miles an hour, its head is perfectly level. Its eyes are completely focused. Like, yeah, there is a real hunter kind of vibe, which you don't always get out of Demetrius Johnson. A reminder of the fact that he's a bully, and you really see it in that sequence. Yeah, I love it. The whole sequence is just awesome. Okay. KO of the year, Demetrius Johnson avenging himself on Adriano Moraes. Let's move on. Next category.
Submission of the year. This was one where I think, we can say Eve in our veggies this year.
Yeah.
He had a grappler on.
Yeah.
We talked to Ben Cohn. We kind of agreed that maybe elements of grappling weren't fake.
Yeah. Did it take us 11 months and 28 days to have a grappling specialist on? Yes. But
But we did it.
We did it.
And now you find yourself looking at the list of submissions of the year, and where's the, twirly, noodly, awesome, high-level submission that should be the standout number one? this kind of category.
Yeah.
Is just like something that would really annoy jiu-jitsu specialists. You know, there's got to be a buggy choke in there that we could name.
Yeah, there was also, what about the guy who broke several people have broken their own limbs doing buggy chokes this year.
Yeah.
That should be, that's a submission of the year. That's jiu-jitsu getting what it deserves.
So, in recognition of our own incredible hard work, we've put no work into this category. And so the awards are Alexei Olenek versus Jared Vanderar. As Alexei Olenek, once again, it's a Garfold submission. Willie Zhang submits Carla Esparza with some kind of
crucifix RNC.
Crucifix, rear naked choke. And Islam Makhachev, arm triangles, Charles Oliveira, whatever.
Yeah. Nothing really stood out. I mean, I consider myself a connoisseur of the knockout, Phil. Where everyone else, all these casual knockout fans are like, ooh, this guy did a 720 backflip wheel kick knockout. I don't need that. You know, unless it's the thing that made like Joaquin Buckley's famous KO so great was not just that it was a cool technique. It was partly that. But it was also just, you know, for lack of a better word, the sort of choreography of it. It looked like something that happened in a movie that was scripted to look awesome. All the beats, the timing was perfect. You could watch it 100 times and feel like you are looking at a piece of art. So I don't just go for the craziest strike for knockout of the year. But for submissions, I'm a complete moron and a casual. And so you better hit some crazy shit I've never seen before for me to notice. And so right away, like Alexei Olenek, does he deserve getting submission of the year for a submission he's gotten 19 times before? Like
that he is heading against, let's be honest, an absolute scrub.
Yeah. I think
yes, I think he does, because it will will inform the rest of the like MMA world to just step their game up.
See, I was going to say Wei Li, because I don't see that submission very often. The crucifix rear naked choke was pretty cool.
Fine.
But then again, it was also a sort of scrub. But no, honestly, I expected Esparza to be able to trouble her in some places, especially in the wrestling, and she just couldn't. I say Wei Li, because that was an interesting submission, and Olenek's would be interesting if I hadn't seen it 100 times. Maybe not fair to him, but it's Jared Vanderar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to let you have this one.
Okay.
Again, I think it would teach everyone to go for better, more and cooler submissions if did give it to Olenek.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm willing to accept that we should give it to the actual, like, most meaningful and also coolest submission.
Honorable mention Gregory Rodriguez for out-grappling everyone he fights and then losing position for trying to go for the coolest submission he can think of.
Yeah.
That man, he's going for that Olenek mentality. He will not sit on a position if there's an awesome thing available to him. So, but it just hasn't worked. Okay. That brings us to Fight of the Year. And the nominees start off with a fight which will later be a top contender for the Best Bad Fight of the Year. Luke Rockhold, Paulo Costa. And I don't think it's impossible that we select this for both Best Fight and Best Bad Fight. Because as we said,
this fight was magic.
Transcendent. It's truly a special fight. I'm not being ironic. I'm not exaggerating my feelings about it. It's difficult to describe all the various itches that this fight scratched. So it really does belong in both categories. Then we also have Drew Dober versus Bobby Green, recent addition. We had Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno 3. We had Yasmin Jauregui versus Yasmin Lucindo. Unexpectedly awesome fight. Khalil Roundtree versus Dustin Jacoby, one I'm sure many people will have forgotten, but which was just an awesome, a genuine chess match, like a great strategic battle. Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. Ricky Simone.
The potential bad fight nominee, but
that's true, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, but definitely awesome. Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore. That hurts my heart that you added that. Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. And Juan Francisco Estrada versus Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez 3. Possibly the best of their 3 fights. And one which, by the way, reminds me that maybe Estrada should also be considered for best game plan or most improved or something, because that was the story of that fight, was just bringing almost in the same way as Volk dominating Max, just bringing lots of incredible ideas built on the experience of their previous fights to the rubber match. He really shone in that fight. So, all right, what do you think?
I feel like this is a 2-horse race. There are many awesome fights in here. Green's fantastic. Figueiredo Moreno 3 is awesome.
Yep.
I think in terms of fights that we're going to talk about years down the line, there's 2 which stand out. They are Estrada Chocolatito 3. They are Rock Cold Paulo Costa.
Yeah.
It has to come down to the battle between these 2, which is the battle, as it always is, emotion versus technique.
Mm-hmm.
Because Estrada Chocolatito 3 is a much better fight than Paulo Costa Luke Rockhold from the technical standpoint of the sport that it finds itself in.
Yeah. It's a better fight than virtually anything we've seen in MMA this year.
I mean, it is a better fight than anything we've seen in MMA this year, pretty much. Like, in terms of the sort of, in terms of the skill, the, like, distance that it goes, that it covers, the story, you know, the long-running storyline of 2 pound for pound talents meeting each other. It is like, if Volkanovski and Holloway kept meeting each other throughout the years, but kept having insanely close competitive fights like their second one the whole time.
Right.
And as you said, in some ways they're best. Each one of the 3 fights, as we kind of said in the episode where we reviewed it, has its own elements to recommend it. But on the other hand, there is Rockhold Costa. I mean, and in some ways, the choice between these 2 is really the choice between MMA and
that is exactly what I was going to say. Yes, because we talked about this after Estrada Chocolatito. That I mentioned that I think it was PDL Troy on Twitter who said that fight really showed like the different experiences you can get out of these 2 sports. Because that was a real story that needed 12 rounds over which to unfold. And then Rockhold Costa was just balls to the wall, heart and will and stupidity the entire time.
Yeah, I think...
And those are the 2 sports, so...
and just the insecurity of it all.
Yeah.
Like, the sort of, the way Luke Rockhold is constantly battling against both himself and, you know, Paulo Costa, the way, you know, Rockhold came up as being this, you know, beautiful, athletic, immortal surfer.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's this, you know, injury-raddled, sour, to man who's obviously being fed to the younger, now better-looking man who is himself also starting to lose his hair and to panic and is starting to lose his grip on things.
Yeah,
I mean, it is the raging bull of MMA fights.
Yeah,
just like something which can make you like someone that you know you would absolutely despise.
Yeah, it's a goddamn movie. And the fact that Rockhold loses makes it a better movie. Like, it's so heroic and it's just not enough. And what an interesting, bittersweet ending. I think I have to go Rockhold Costa, even though, like, Estrada Chocolatito 3 is a much better fight in so many ways. But man, it just has that emotional weight that I want out of a big fight.
Yeah. I think I also might agree with you on this one. I mean, yeah, and I don't. This is the thing with Estrada Chocolatito 3. As we said, every one of those three fights has something to recommend it as being the best. You know, if you want to, they're all different weightings of sort of technique and approach versus, you know, raw physical ability. This is the one at the lowest ebb of both of these fighters physically, but, you know, perhaps the smartest, and, you know, the one where there's the least room for maneuver. The thing about that is that these three, you know, if you wanted to look at a fight like Estrada Chocolatito 3, you could look at Estrada Chocolatito 2 or 1.
Yeah.
Could be like, this also scratches some of the same itches. I've never seen a fight like Rockhold Costa.
Yeah.
Never seen one of, you know, Rockhold like screaming fuck you and punching him in the face.
Yeah.
The brutal punch to the dick. What more like appropriate punch is there in this, like, the most insecure and masculine of like MMA fights of all time?
And smearing, you know, blood in Paulo Costa's face, like, for
I mean,
lack of
the symbolism of the whole thing is just completely unmatched.
Here's a man who has given his all, is not winning, and for lack of a way to win the fight in the final minute, spends his time making Paulo Costa drink his blood. Just spitting into the gates of hell. It's Rockhold Costa. I'm sorry. Every time I talk about it, I get excited all over again. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's absolutely unique. And yeah, it's got to be fight of the year. It's just impulsive and awesome.
Yeah. You can't look away, man. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the generic boring awards. I think we've successfully whittled this section down over the years into being relatively efficient. That was only 25 minutes of show so far.
Yeah, we are getting good at. I think this is what people want. We've said it before. People don't want boring awards. People know where to go for them. I mean, hopefully people will at least be cross. We've gone for a absolute mess of a fight as our fight of the year, and specifically put it up against a technical masterclass in order to lose at the last hurdle. So, but yeah.
I got one thing to say to those people. Go watch it again. Tell me how you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Okay. We didn't decide what we're going to do with the music this year. I'm kind of scared of that, but whatever I decided, it's happening now.
The kimono, like I'm rocking with Bono. You don't know judo. You don't know jiu-jitsu. You could be Guido, the guy with the speedo, looking at me wrong with the sign my pedo. I tried to book him up, but he fled to Puerto Rico.
Well, that brings us to the weird stuff section of the Handies. And here is where we collect all of our various awards. I think really most people's favorite awards, which is why they comprise the massive second act of this yearly show. All the ones that basically don't fit into another category, and some of which don't really make sense. I'm going to have to ask you to explain one of them to me again when we get to it, because we've refused to remove it year after year, even though it's an extremely specific reference to a certain moment in time. But anyway, first up, we have, is this me or you?
I think it's me.
Okay.
Who did fight of the year, right?
Take it away.
So we have the Fight Like This Person award for good process and technique. And
to pronounce the process.
Starting off this list of awards, we have, of course, Sean O'Malley. After his destruction of Gian, who wouldn't want to fight like this masterclass of a fighter, like defeating one of the pound-for-pound candidates, and the man that everyone thought would become champion again. Instead, Sean O'Malley proved that he's much better at MMA than Piotr Jan is. Angela Hill for her performances against Emily Ducote, where she kind of back her combination punching and her clinch game and really synthesized it together into like a genuinely effective round winning style. Arnold Allen for a number of performances. And then we have a few more kind of breakout guys that you can see, like, if you want to fight like this person, there are there's Jack Della Maddalena, there's Adrian Yanez, and there's Nathaniel Wood. I think as new modern fighters are all doing cool things in the striking, in the striking phase. Who to pick?
We could also, obviously, if we were a different kind of show, a smarter kind of show, we could honor, like, why wouldn't you have Islam Makhachev here? For example, I mean, because he's a grappler, that's the reason, but, like, that's a guy who knows exactly where his bread is buttered and knows how to drag everyone into his game one way or the other. So let's at least say honorable mention Islam Makhachev.
And I suppose we have to honor Alexander Volkanovski. I mean, we mentioned
absolutely.
again that he's not an overly complicated MMA fighter, but he can dismantle very, very good MMA fighters with only a few tools.
Does all the little things perfectly. So
I think it might. In that way, does it have to be Alexander Volkanovski? Is that just cheating? Just to be like, oh, just fight like the pound for pound number one guy?
Yeah, I mean, let's say yes, but let's also pick somebody who gets the actual handy. I don't want to have to give Volkanovski 2 handies in a row. He's got it. He's got it made already.
Who else do we think then? Jack Della Maddalena?
Yeah, I do love a lot. I mean, for all the times I've been screaming at naturally heavy-handed fighters to go to the body, I really like Della Maddalena's approach. I'm almost inclined to give it to Angela Hill because this fight really felt like a culmination of all the efforts she's been. I mean, she's really been improving in the way that like normal non-freak athletes do. Where there's been several hiccups along the way where you kind of think she's peaked. And then she'll come in with like a good game plan and a few new tools that she's tweaked, and suddenly it feels like her game is just by a small degree, but still considerably like more comprehensive than it was before. And that fight with Emily Ducote was like everything Angela Hill has been working towards. Granted, against I think an opponent who, whether I realized it or not beforehand, was particularly suited to kind of fold against Angela Hill's style. But yeah, I just like a fighter who just slowly gets better and doesn't stop improving. And I really think that's Angela Hill.
I'm down.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the kind of silly niche award I think people will hopefully get annoyed by. And that's really what you should go for with awards. But yeah, I think someone obviously has many technical flaws. She's kind of a noodly-armed puncher. She gets herself out of position and so on. But I think someone who has still built a cohesive game, one which uses things which used to be liabilities as weapons, like pace and consistency. So like that's how you build like a long-term winning game in the UFC.
Yeah.
Take your weaknesses and you just work on them over and over, and eventually, you'll go from being the person who's getting submitted on the ground to the person who's getting TKOs on the floor.
Yeah.
And the person who gets exhausted by their own offense into being the person who just drowns their opponent. So, yeah. Let's give Angie Hill the handy.
She didn't try to change weight classes. She didn't you know what I mean? She just did the things you're supposed to do to actually get better. She's just been learning, and that's what I think this award is designed to commemorate. Okay, well that brings us to worst fight. It's Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza 2.
It has to be. There's no. I mean,
there have been other bad fights this year. Literally, all of them feel like they feel like watching Terminator in comparison. There's never ever been a fight this bad ever.
yeah, I mean, we said stuff like, Fight of the Year and so on, or Fighter of the Year. These are areas where there's reasonable contention.
Yes.
Right? KO of the Year, fine, anything. Some years someone jumps out at you.
Mm.
When John Jones fought 4 times in whenever it was, 2011 or whenever he took the belt, this was a lock for Fighter of the Year. Conor McGregor in his big run, a lock for Fighter of the Year. You were watching it and you knew this was the worst fight of the year. Nothing was going to come close. Nothing could come close. In many ways, nothing in the modern UFC has come close, and in many ways, nothing ever has come close.
Yeah.
This is all-time great shit. Credit to Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. They've written their names into MMA history. This is gonna take some topping. I don't know. I know when I see a great fight or a great fighter, I know there's a very strong possibility. I keep watching. If I keep watching for years, I'm gonna see a better fight. I'm gonna see a better fighter.
Right.
Will be someone better than Alexander Volkanovski turning up in this sport.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever going to see a worse fight than this.
And especially because there's no excuse.
Hmm?
A lot of the other worst fights are from way early in MMA's history. Don't look at me wrong. There's plenty of really dull, aimless grappling matches in early Pride events. There's Shamrock Severn in the UFC. But there's at least these are pioneers. The game is still very much being figured out at this stage. Rose Namajunas spent the previous year turning into the best version of herself. Carla Esparza is one of the hustlingest fighters I know. Somebody who gets into dire trouble virtually every fight and frequently wins against good opponents because she just refuses to lie down. And this is what they produced? This disgusting bastard child?
And it's perfect. It is like Costa Rockhold. It is in some ways just perfectly configured for what it is.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the very best things about it is that 5th round. Rose Namajunas tries a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Proves that she can instantly, really easily win any phase of this fight that she wants to. Because even without that, you could be like, well, if she tried to grapple, maybe she would have gotten herself in trouble again. No. And in that 5th round, she proves to you that that those first 4 rounds are existentially completely meaningless.
Yeah.
But have been entirely shadows of her own brain. And
literally 2 people fighting against themselves. And not having any idea of how to win and not really being bold enough to actually try. That's how little contact they had with each other. They were just fighting their own demons. I mean, if it were more characteristic, it is in a way, but if it were more characteristic of Esparza as well as Namajunas, I would also put this in the upcoming Elkins versus Johnson award. Cause this is really just both people. Again, they're not fighting each other. They're having a stressful experience. They're in a fight, but they are not fighting each other at all. I mean, literally at all. Let me just look at
it's magically bad.
Let me just look at the stats really quick. I'm just curious. Wow, this sounds wrong. UFC stats credits Rose with 37 strikes landed. And Carla with 30. That sounds too high.
Yeah.
That sounds considerably too high.
Maybe. You're literally 6 strikes around.
Yeah.
That is actually fair enough. It's just under 1 strike per minute.
Many of which are completely non-committal low kicks or glancing jabs. We're not talking significant has never been more misapplied than in this case. There isn't a single truly significant strike in the entire fight.
Again, I just don't think I'm ever going to see anything. a thing as bad as this again.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's enough.
It's almost impossible to be as worse than this.
It is. If yeah, like you said, if like Costa Rockhold is like the summation of all the things you really want to see in a fight, this is literally the total absence of anything you want to see in a fight. It is not a fight. It's impossible to be worse because it's as if the fight was canceled and we just had to look at an empty octagon for 25 minutes anyway, except worse. Because I wouldn't feel insulted by the empty octagon. I wouldn't be like, what are you doing? Oh, I like how we both added, by the way.
Yes.
Simultaneously, both of us remembered to add one of these fighters to a later award. That's good. Okay. Well, that's enough about the worst fight. There are no other contenders. It's an easy pick. It might win next year for lack of a better candidate. But anyway, on to the next one. Best bad fight. Phil, the nominees.
It is Luke Rockhold, Paulo Costa again.
Yeah.
Obviously. Guy Bear versus Jake Collier. Fantastic. Heavyweight action at its finest. Like, you want from heavyweights is like people who shouldn't even be heavyweights.
Mm-hmm.
All. Underboy versus Kevin Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might have this for their actual fight of the year, but it is incredibly stupid.
Yep.
And they are stupid for having it there. And it is still awesome. Yuri Prochazka, Glover Teixeira.
Another
this
one
was again like Rockhold, like Costa versus Rockhold. This was also in the actual like best fights category, but it is also incredibly silly.
Mm-hmm.
Some ways a culmination of light heavyweight at its most light heavyweight. Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson. Think great example. I mean, once again, this is one of these fights where it kind of happened and it was over, and then a whole bunch of people were like, "Man, this was awesome." And you sort of find yourself going, "That's it."
Was it?
Juliana Pena, Amanda Nunes too. Classic. In just like the adaptation and the like battling of wills between the two of these women. Once again, a fight where the same thing happens over and over again, and there's a lot of humor to be found in repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Then Paul Craig, Volkan Oezdemir. Paul Craig turning in one of the most Paul Craig performances of his UFC career.
Mm-hmm. I wish UFC Stats had kept a record of guard pulls.
Yeah,
because there's got to be at least 15.
And so, who do we pick for this one? This one is really tricky.
This is a tough one. There were a lot of good bad fights. It almost feels like the back half of the year. And in fact, I'm realizing now, like, there should actually be way more light heavyweight fights on here, because I know that was a constant recurring theme that we just kept seeing spectacularly stupid light heavyweight fights. It's been a banner year for 205.
Really has. I've said it before. It's at its best right now.
It is.
It's not pretending to be good.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't like, "Oh, this is the division you watch if you care about the UFC." No. Stupid.
It's kind of
always stupid, but now it knows it.
Yeah, it's basically like returned to exactly what it was in like the Shogun era. Like, yeah, these guys were never good. They would have complete messes of fights, and like whoever was the most athletic freak would just crush people. That's what it's supposed to be. It's what it's good for. Pena Nunes too was very funny, but it does pale in comparison to the first fight.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately, I mean, I would love to include. I'm sure we had it last year, but it was just before the end of 2021.
It won last year, didn't it?
It must have. I mean, it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, but it must have. If we had, I couldn't think of enough contenders, but in future we should consider having a best overcorrection award, and this would definitely be a lock for that. Amanda Nunes, like, changing basically her entire game just to not get hit with slip jabs as often is really funny. Costa Rockhold though. Like, I almost feel like we should just, I mean, we gave it the ultimate honor of best fight. Maybe we should just pick something else as a matter of course.
I'm tempted by Yuri Glover.
Really?
Because this was the culmination of Modern 205.
Yeah.
It was just like people, two guys fighting. It was like they were fighting in completely different sports. Like,
right. Certainly different age brackets.
Yeah. Prochaska just couldn't defend takedowns or block punches, and yeah, Teixeira was just like he was fighting in the old man's division of a completely different sport, but he was just determined to keep trying things until they worked.
Yeah.
The insane switches in momentum, the comeback submission by Yuri, who was just like, why don't I try this grappling thing? It looks cool. All the insane scrambles that were just 100% like technique on one side and athleticism on the other. I think this is like, I mean, it is an awesome fight.
It really is.
It is like genuinely a thrilling back and forth battle, with a narrative, but it's also, it's a culmination of a really stupid division. It kind of sums up that division in the best way.
My only hang up, I'm totally with you, except that my only hang up is that it's almost not bad enough. Like, it's not you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, Costa Rockhold is like, neither guy looks particularly good. It's undeniably a great fight without being good in any way. Prochaska Teixeira, there are a lot of good moments and good ideas in it. It's just like a very single-minded kind of goodness on display. But yeah, fine. I mean, you want to call it a bad fight? It certainly is a sloppy mess. There's no doubt about that. I'm also tempted by Chris Barnett and Jake Cutlier.
Yeah.
Because that fight was just really stupid. But balls to the wall, and Huggy Bear just once again stealing the show with unbelievable heart and determination in a fight in which he had all absence of defense and much of the specifics of technique. Completely lacking. I don't know. I'm going to let you take the lead. If you feel like Prochaska Teixeira, it is a fight that deserves to be honored somewhere. I just almost feel like it's unfair to honor it for being bad, when really the thing I remember about it was how awesome it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've given Fight of the Year to one of our most technically lacking fights ever. So I think it's okay to give best bad fight to I think it's okay to give best bad fight to a fight which is also actually, in its own way quite good.
Yeah.
Just Prochaska Teixeira. Again, I think it's the fact that it really culminates in what light heavyweight is right now.
It's true.
It really finds what light heavyweight is right now. It's just like, this is just a mess of people who are just going to throw themselves at each other, and at the end, one of them is going to get finished. Who knows how? It might not be the way you're expecting. Yeah, I think it is a great fight. It's a tremendous swan song for Teixeira if he never gets back to any kind of title shot again. It was obviously significant enough in a kind of sense of fate that the UFC belt has decided that it will only return to Jiri once he returns, and it won't go to anyone else. But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was also very silly.
Yeah, Prochaska refusing to win in any way that wouldn't have kept his samurai honor intact. It does have that kind of feeling. Cool. I'm fine with it. Yeah, it balances things out. The best fight of the year was a complete technical shit show. The best bad fight features a lot of good ideas with no apparent structure or either fighter really being able to adjust to what the other guy's doing at all. So fine. That's good enough for me. Which brings us to our next weird stuff award. Did we get turned around somehow? No, okay. This is me. This is the Laugh Out Loud Pure Entertainment Fighter of the Year. And I gotta say, I feel like in previous years we've had more standout contenders. This is a mixed field, and some of the old dogs have maybe lost a step. They maybe aren't performing to their potential. So here are the nominees: Dricus du Plessis, newcomer to the field, dark horse, certainly in the Laugh Out Loud.
Strong opening year, I think. For him.
That's right. Yeah, he really announced himself. Iwan Kutalaba.
Classic.
I think multiple time winner. Luke Rockhold. Come on. We've talked about it enough already. Paulo Costa. We've talked about it enough already. Kevin Holland. Again, man who has been featured in several previous years. And Chris Barnett. Huggy Bear himself. All of these fighters ridiculously entertaining in one way or the other. Unfortunately for Kutalaba and Holland, the two, returning veterans of this category, they both set such a high bar. It's almost impossible for them. Like, they will have to truly innovate to come up with a way to stand out as the Pure Entertainment Fighter of the Year in future. I don't feel like either of them can win it this year, even though I have enjoyed every moment they've been in the cage.
Agreed. These are the two who will be, these are the time greats. These guys will be battling throughout the ages. They are the Estrada Chocolatito 3 of meme fighters for heavy hands.
Mm-hmm.
As many people have said, if you could combine any two fighters, and everyone was like, oh, I'd combine this fighter with this good fighter, I would combine Iwan Kutalaba with Kevin Holland. Everyone knows that. Just a guy who would just be getting incessantly, incredibly mad at his own idiocy.
Oh, he's doing the thing I do when I'm like being beaten in a video game, where he makes corny jokes, but it's only to cover for the fact that he's getting extremely pissed. And then when the jokes land and the person who's beating him laughs at them, it just makes him 3 times more pissed. And then he smashes his head into the wall, but like after a backflip, I would love to combine Kutalaba and Kevin Holland into one man. I'm not sure the world's ready for that.
Yeah. Kutalaba, he's done things that obviously were great this year, furiously diving onto takedowns against Walker until he got submitted. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his finest work. Kevin Holland, dancing and singing before he fought Wonderboy, fighting like a complete loony, letting Wonderboy up. Sure, it's good stuff, but it's not. This isn't Kevin Holland getting hit by earth-shaking ground and pound from Thiago Santos, just be like, damn, this guy hits hard. Or whatever the hell he was saying.
Yeah.
I think Colt Costa, they've both, been great in other areas, but in some ways, maybe too uncomfortable to be Laugh Out Loud Pure Entertainment Fighter.
Honestly, yeah, too harrowing.
Which means that I think it really comes down to a surprising clash between Huggy Bear and Dricus du Plessis.
I think these are the two most deserving fighters. Huggy Bear has had 2 fights this year, or was the John Vellante one actually at the end of 2021? I feel like it might have been. Whatever the case, he has become it feels like he, in just 1 year, has sort of become like the small-time star in the UFC that he was really always meant to be. Expanded beyond his hardcore fandom, because his fights have been ludicrous. He looks ridiculous. He does ridiculous things given how he looks. That's always a good combo. You get the fat guy who's fast and athletic is always fun. And then each time he gets on the mic and delivers the greatest post-fight speech you have heard in months after each of these victories. And then dances. And dances, again, quite well for a fat man. Which,
And despite being like 5 feet tall, he is he the first UFC heavyweight to miss weight?
Oh my god. I forgot about that. No, there was,
he missed weight in the Collier fight.
There was, we've had this discussion before, or me and Zane did. There was, oh, I'm forgetting his name. He got cut, like, this year or the last year.
Archistano, I don't know.
There was another heavyweight who missed weight, like, very recently before. But that is definitely an added bonus, that Huggy Bear is a 5-foot-tall man who apparently has to cut down from 280 or whatever to make weight and couldn't do it this time. That rules.
Yeah. And then going up against him, we have Dricus du Plessis, who is also fantastic in his own way.
As one of our YouTube commenters said, the first UFC fighter to be controlled by Twitch chat. It's a good comment.
Yeah, he's as we said, like the epitome of the MMA fighter who has no visible skill set, who just tries really, really hard. Also his own so he's either strikes and then he tries really, really hard at it and he's not very good, but it doesn't matter because he's just trying so hard, or he grapples and it doesn't matter that he's not very good at that either because he's trying really, really hard the whole time.
Yeah.
He gets absolutely exhausted incredibly quickly, then just keeps fighting exactly the same fight, having a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th wind throughout like the course of a 3-round fight. And then after fights will say completely insane stuff about how he's like the only real African on the UFC roster. And I mean, how can you not love this guy? And also the fact that he's like beating actual like notable named fighters.
Yeah, and there's the fact that we mentioned this after the Till fight, that he's like weirdly prescient as well.
Yeah.
For a guy who fights the way he does. Again, that essential contradiction. With Huggy Bear, you have the physicality and the actual athleticism buried underneath. And then with Dricus du Plessis, you have the complete lack of process and structure, but with the brain of like a smart, of like Bilal Muhammad, like a game planning fighter. Very strange. Yeah, he really is in the same way that Teixeira Prochaska was like a culmination of light heavyweight. There are 2 kinds of middleweights, right? It's a division of specialists, but then because of that, there are the generalists who try really hard. That's kind of middleweight's equivalent of the guy who knows jiu-jitsu at light heavyweight. And so really it just occurred to me that we absolutely need to see Dricus du Plessis versus Anthony Hernandez, because they are both that type of fighter, and that fight would be ridiculous and awesome.
I just want Ian Heinisch to put a few wins together.
Heinisch
du Plessis.
Another guy exactly in that category. Guy who like lets you out wrestle him until you get tired. Yeah. That's another kind of middleweight. I like Huggy Bear more, but I think I've enjoyed du Plessis more. I think he's more baffling to me. I kind of knew what Huggy Bear was, and I know what heavyweight is. So I like, it sort of makes sense to me what's happening in his fights.
So yeah, he's fighting pretty bad people, and he's 1-on-1 this year. Well, he's sort of 1-on-1.
Yeah. Dricus du Plessis is more compelling, because I don't understand what's happening or why it works.
He's like beating actual named fighters,
and
you're like, how far will this go? Is he just going to make... what would happen if he fought Alex Pereira? Surely he would get destroyed, but what if he didn't?
What if he didn't? What if he was like Bruno Silva, except like he didn't get tired and he wasn't afraid, even though he gets knocked down like 8 times? Who knows? Yeah, he's a mystery. And he just looks so stupid when he's fighting too. That's the other thing, is that Huggy Bear often looks kind of cool. Dricus du Plessis, he's clearly a freak athlete, but nothing reads coordinated athlete in his fights. It's a complete mess.
It really is a hyper-powered quap right there.
So I think it's got to be Dricus.
I think, yeah, he's had a tremendous year, and also capping it off with finishing off Darren Till. Till, who was like, I'm going to be a three division world champion at some point earlier on in his MMA career, and has just, tried to do that by doing like three things. That's fighting someone who's just like, I'm going to go do things until they work.
Like Conor McGregor before him, Till has discovered that maybe, in his words, I'm a light heavyweight in the middleweight division, that maybe that was more responsible for his success than he thought. With the difference being that Conor McGregor is a far better fighter than Darren Till. Yeah.
So yes, Dricus du Plessis, he wins this year, and I'm genuinely intrigued to see how far he can go.
Yeah, well earned. And I just hope that he learns a lesson from the mistakes of Michel Pereira before him and does not become technical. Do not get better, Dricus. Just try harder.
Yeah. Don't. No, trying to be technical like guys like Johnny Walker or Pereira. We're watching you. Keep doing your thing. It's working. It is
working, and it will work forever. And just tell yourself that. And don't listen to anyone who says otherwise, especially not any so-called coaches.
Out is the mind killer, Dricus. Just be. All you need is complete blind faith, and I have faith that you have it.
Technique is the mind killer. Yeah. God, I'm just picturing Dricus du Plessis' footwork in my head, and it's making me giggle. Okay. Well deserved, Dricus. I hope you enjoyed that handy. Okay. Next up, a new addition to the Handies. And I have completely lost track at this point when it's me doing the award and when it's you. Me.
I think it's me.
This is
Say
you.
It's me.
Okay.
So this is On the Beating Around by listener Isaac Spooner, or to have managed to change our opinions of them. And we have taken this to mean for the better or the worse.
Yes, that is how he intended it to. If a fighter has had an in-cage moment that completely reversed our feelings about them.
First up, we have Paddy Pimblett exhausting Connor's supply of grace. Remember at the beginning of this year?
Yeah, I do.
How much you were like, I like Paddy Pimblett. He's funny and he gets fat. Excellent. Cheeto Vera being too cool for Phil. Cute Cheeto. Montelidze reveals that he plays chess.
Instantly, yeah. I didn't want to admit it at first, but come on.
Kevin Holland Tufa, the rare fighter that has managed to turn us around and then turn us back around. Luke Rockhold, once again, like one of the just standouts of this year, really, with like one fight, manages to just think, do we like Luke Rockhold now?
I hate Luke Rockhold, but I loved him in that moment.
And then Rose Namajunas.
Listeners will know.
And
I like Rose. Listeners will know. I have taken many, many opportunities to completely dump on her. All I want in my heart is, especially now that I saw that grappling tournament she was in where she just got completely bossed around by Jillian
Robertson?
Yeah. I'm just desperate to see her rematch with the resurgent Karolina Kowalkiewicz and lose again. That's all I want. I want revenge for having to see that fight.
That's fair enough. So I guess do you know who else we're missing? We do actually have to have Sean O'Malley in here.
Oh yeah. I will add him right now. Sean O'Malley.
And with his destruction of Goto Yan.
Yeah. He's actually, interestingly, well, possibly with the exception of Cheeto, Sean's the only one whose opinion shift has been the actual estimation of his fighting skill. Because with Patty, I knew he was dog shit. I was just like, there's some charm and charisma to the man that just took a little bit to wear off. But with Sean, it's actually like sort of realizing he's better than I thought he was. I don't like him any more than I did. I think he's one of the most annoying fighters on the roster. But he's actually like, he has a legit case for having beaten Petr Yan. So what are you going to say about that? That he's not a good MMA fighter? He clearly is. Specialized maybe, but hey. So who else stands out for you?
I'm not sure, I mean, Kevin Holland managing to do it twice.
Yeah.
Is obviously a big one.
Souring me on him and then instantly earning my life back.
Cheeto Vera, obviously. Because,
yeah, that's a big one for you.
That's got to be my vote. Is Cheeto? Yeah, because I used to love Cheeto Vera, and now I've realized that he's just everything that I've always hated.
I think we might have to go with that one.
Yeah.
I mean, the Roman Dolidze one was a powerful moment of character growth for me.
But afterwards, you were still like, no, I still hate him. He just looks gross.
Well, that's just what you call the second act of a story, Phil. That's me. I've right from the start, essentially, I have been shown the lesson I need to learn, and the bulk of the story is me resisting it and having it wear me down. That was the montage section of Groundhog's Day.
Wait a minute, am I incorrect? Can we get Roman Dolidze versus Dricus du Plessis?
We
should. Is that like a reasonable match to make now?
It really, truly is. We should make that fight right now. That, and then Fluffy Hernandez gets to fight the winner immediately after.
I mean, they've both actually beaten like genuinely relevant middleweights, so
yeah.
This would be for like a ranking. So
yeah,
yes. But yeah, I think it does have to be Cheeto.
It's got to be Cheeto. Yeah,
he's ruined himself so much for me. And
it's really changed.
Cool.
A bit of a twofer as well, because it's really changed how I feel about you. You're disgusting to me now. Whereas before, I thought you were all right.
More than this has changed how you feel about yourself. Because now you found yourself thinking, oh my god, are my favorite fighters, or are my favorite niche fighters simply immortal?
That's true. It got both of us, because I had to contend with the horrifying realization that all the little weirdos that catch my eye, the reason they catch my eye, the reason that I get this feeling that they're better than they're showing at this point, is actually because they're freak athletes.
Most specifically, freak athletes are simply absorbing damage.
Yeah, that's true. It has to be Cheeto, and possibly for both of us. To a lesser extent me, a more complicated extent, but yeah, it's got to be Cheeto Vera.
Cheeto Vera.
Wow.
Should have known it.
I didn't see it coming, honestly. I didn't expect this one. I thought, Rose Namajunas, like, I hate Rose now. I will never forgive her. And I really liked Rose's fights before, but that was such a bad fight. It's completely soured me on her. I thought she was going to be a front runner here as soon as I thought of her. And, obviously Pimblett is such a story, and everyone's paying so much attention to him that, like, I just could not help but, run out of patience. But, it's gotta be Cheeto. There's no other choice.
Has to be.
All right, moving on to another new award. This one's suggested by... This is the worst thing about having to credit people, is the terrible names they have online. Suggested by The Throats 420 on Twitter. This was the Elkins versus Johnson Award, which I have described as a fight in which both athletes met their fates virtually independent of one another's presence. A true outcome fight in which both outcomes happen, basically. And there are a lot of contenders for this category. This is a surprisingly common dynamic. We have Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. We had Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. We had Holly Holm versus Ketlin Vieira. I almost forgot her name. We had, actually, I think that one was meant to be included under I think that was meant to be included under the other award that I don't fully understand. We have Tai Tuivasa versus Derek Lewis. Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo. One of the, before Blachowicz Ankalaev, or, no, wait, hold on. What just happened, Phil? A recent one where it was a fight where we had the same exchange over and over again. Cannonier Strickland.
Oh, yes.
Does that one go in here too?
Not, I mean, because it's not really that both of them tend to have that fight.
Yeah.
I think the Elkins-Johnson Award, I mean, Elkins-Johnson, it's named after that for a reason, because you just like, this is 100% the fight.
Okay, all right.
Where Michael Johnson destroys him and then gets submitted late, and it's exactly what happened.
Okay, that's true. Pantoja versus Perez. Bully versus the bullying victim. Or vice versa. And then Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez. Which, when
Magny, one of the goats of this award, I'm going to say it right now, even though we just started it.
Which, when you brought it up, made me realize that in future we desperately need a Neil Magny specific category or one named in his honor. Like, there has to be a way to commemorate fighters who, by hook or by crook, somehow just get everyone to meet them on their terms. You know, the Anglerfish Award or something. I know that's been applied to Derek Brunson in the past, but there's something special about the Neil Magny deception, the physical deception that makes people fight his fight. But anyway, those are our contenders for the Elkins versus Johnson Award. I feel like the middleweight and light heavyweight ones at the top are really the top contenders. Blachowicz Ankalaev, which loses out only slightly because Magomed Ankalaev did in fact respond to pressure and fight the fight that I don't think he wanted to fight, which is the one that actually wins. Adesanya Pereira is in so many ways the exact story of their previous fights, with the added sort of fate element of it being like a culmination of the path Israel Adesanya in particular has been on throughout his MMA career, becoming more passive, more defensive, and nothing that happens can change his mind that isn't the best way to approach a fight. No matter who's in front of him, no matter what worked against that opponent in the past and what didn't, he's going to fight an Israel Adesanya fight against everyone. So that one really, that looms large in my mind.
I think for my money, it's Blachowicz Ankalaev.
Yeah.
Because, like Elkins Johnson, it's such fantastic two-way traffic. Because
that's true.
Adesanya Pereira is on its, I mean, fits in with the dynamic of their first two fights in that, like, Adesanya's kind of winning and then he loses. The difference between, obviously, their first two fights and this one is that he was winning in stupid ways in this one. It was like, oh, Pereira accidentally fell over and then just spent an entire round on his back, or like he gets stunned right at the end of the round, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Blachowicz Ankalaev was so perfectly what we said would happen. In both its halves.
That's true.
Blachowicz was going to beat Ankalaev up on the feet. And you wouldn't have expected that he was just going to absolutely cripple him. And then Ankalaev is going to accidentally realize that he can just wrestle him.
Yeah.
Then he's going to dominate him from that on. And it was so what happened.
That's
like,
true.
He got one single leg or whatever it was, and he was just like, oh, this man can't get up at all, can he?
Yeah.
He could have done it all the time.
And it
it's
has.
Like, we all knew that, We all knew that, Magomed. We all knew that you could take him down whenever you wanted to, and that he would never get up from it. We all knew that would happen.
How is this just occurring to you now? The fuck? Yeah.
But we also knew that it would take you several rounds to figure it out.
True. Yeah.
That you wouldn't even figure it out. It would be forced upon you.
All right, you're selling me. Yeah, I had it that somehow in my mind that like the Uncle Ive being shaken out of his fight was, but even that was part of the predictable dynamic because he had done it before. Like other people had to convince him to grapple, in order for him to do it. And, it was only at that point that he did start to, again, dominate them with the grappling. And much like Elkins Johnson itself, the fight for which this is named, it is split almost perfectly down the middle between the two fights. There is like the first part of the fight where Jan is winning, and there's the second fight where he is getting crushed. And really they both kind of get crushed in one way or another in the two halves. Yeah, I think you're right.
Everything about it is just listed out in their previous fights with other people. You just be like, this is what's going to happen. And then it just perfectly does. Yeah.
Truly, our mistake in previewing that fight was assuming that one or the other should happen. We maybe should have keyed in on the fact that both things will likely happen in the very same fight.
That's what I mean. That was my pick. That like
true. Oh, that's right.
Was going to win on the feet until Ankalaev accidentally fell into a wrestling game, but it was the fact that it was so perfectly balanced that it was a draw.
Yeah. A draw, a perfect 50-50, it's gotta be. Alright, so the inaugural winner of the Elkins versus Johnson Award, Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. Congratulations, fellas. You're never fighting for a title again. Sorry. Alright, next up, a returning favorite. Take it away, Phil.
Okay, this is good old the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for explosive muscularity.
That's right.
And this was a pretty good year for explosive muscularity. I'm not going to lie.
It's MMA. It's kind of always a good year for explosive muscularity.
Well, some years that there isn't. There just isn't the rippedness that you want. Like
the mass that you're looking for, the vascularity.
Yeah. This was a good year.
Other things that Dr. Patrick Wyman is not homoerotically interested in.
Oh, no, of course not.
It's completely normal.
It's just cool. It's just cool, all right? So we have Drew Dober versus Rafael Alves. One of the great Chads against one of the most athletically gifted lightweights out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have Joaquin Buckley, always going to be a strong contender in this category against Razak Al Hassan. The fight itself maybe not as explosive as you might like, but just so much athleticism and explosive muscularity in there.
It's memorably stupid.
Oh yeah. Devin Clark, William Knight, light heavyweights showing that they're athletic as well and that they're not much else. Johnny Walker, Iwan Kusalaba. Short but effort-filled. Cyril Gane, Francis Ngannou. Not a great fight by any metric, but definitely very athletic and very muscular. Then Phil Hawes, Roman Dolidze. Phil Hawes, again, another guy I think is going to have many opportunities to be nominated for the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award.
Mm-hmm.
And Roman Dolidze, similar to Dricus du Plessis, a man who simply tries hard at MMA and is able to do that because he's really athletic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's an easy frontrunner here. I think it's Drew Dober, Rafael Alves.
This is, by the way, another category in which we could have easily put Rockhold Costa. Yet another way in which that fight is memorable is that it's a complete himbo match. But yes.
I think the only thing is that both of them, I think, are not at their best.
No, they're not. They're aging and not into silver foxes, unfortunately.
It's explosive muscularity should really be.
That's true. Yeah.
It's it should be at its most explosive and masculine moment.
Yeah, the guy who was 3 credits shy of graduating and dropped out of college 4 years ago, who's still at the frat parties every weekend. that guy he doesn't get honored in this category. That is Costa and Rockhold both to a T. So
if this award had existed back when Rockhold was fighting Jacare, absolute slam dunk. But I think for prime beefcake, this year's winner has to be Drew Dober, Rafael Alves.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's breakdance out of submission techniques. Drew Dober is a square-jawed Chad. They've had a really athletic fight. It was awesome.
Yeah. Dober might be, I mean, he really is the Chad fighter. The man looks like a goddamn meme of masculinity. And it's just a bonus that he appears to be a sweetheart despite that.
Yeah.
Dober Alves. There hasn't been another fight which combines the sort of, the attractiveness that Dr. Wyman is platonically interested in muscular men, and the sheer physical attributes that always drew the good doctor's eye. It's got
they can't just look good getting off the bus. They got to really go for it as well.
That's right.
Platonically.
No fight ever has inspired a need to soak a rag in oil, and help these guys shine for the bodybuilding judges more than Drew Dober versus Rafael Alves. I realize I'm conflating Pat in my mind with sort of Mac from It's Always Sunny. He makes the gang oil up the beefcakes on his day. Yeah. Okay. Well, that moves us on to a related award. This one, another new addition suggested, sort of two awards that we conflated into one. A longtime listener, Ben Appel. Apple? I was never told how to pronounce it. And somebody who I will just name their Twitter handle. It's Roman numeral 3_wave at III_wave. And they both suggested some version of the athletic cheater / don't fight like this person award. I put this one here because it seems like a nice counterpart to the Patrick Wyman Memorial, but it could just as easily have followed the fight like this person award that we will have in the upcoming strategy section, because there are way more of these guys than there are the latter. And something I always notice is people that I just desperately want them to improve, and they just keep getting by without having to. And it's only when they have to, when it's usually too late, that they realize they need to actually get good. So anyway, the nominees. I've delayed because Phil is still adding them. David Onama. Broke out into the UFC, looked like a hot prospect, looks like exactly the same hot prospect like 4 fights later. Phil Rowe. Wouldn't win if he wasn't so big. Claudio Puelles finally learned a lesson. Paddy Pimblett, an interesting contender, because not even that athletic.
Not actually that athletic, but it is the thing that he has the most going for it.
Phil Hawes, the other Phil. Big time athletic cheater, becoming less of a don't fight like this person fighter, though. So not a top contender for me. Alexander Hernandez. Somehow we haven't had this category before, but he feels like a returning fighter. Jake Matthews. And sad face Nasrat Hakparast. Who, Phil, you just added that one. I don't know if it necessarily fits, because he's getting cooked lately. Like, he's breaking. Although to be fair, that's the end of the line for this kind of fighter, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Lots of these guys. Phil Hawes. That's true. Yeah. Is he doing well? Again, I feel for Phil Hawes because he is trying.
He is actually trying. I almost want to remove him right now from the nominees because he's trying at least. What more can you say? The guy just might not have a good chin, or he's got some other hang up.
We're also missing a bunch of people who are actual who are actual cheaters. So we've got a later award. So we've got Dricus du Plessis. Why is he not here?
True.
Because surely he should win.
Absolutely.
This.
Add him right now. Here we go. I know people love you talk because people love when I type while you're talking.
Okay, so
hold on.
We have to have Dricus du Plessis, and we have to have who's the big silly heavyweight, just knocks people out by windmilling at them. The guy who just strikes like Alexander Olenek, but who has dynamite in his hands.
Sergei Pavlovich.
Sergei Pavlovich.
Another one. Pavlovich.
I'm tempted to give it to. You know what? I'm tempted to give this to either Hernandez or Matthews. Because they are fighters who look good against people who are bad.
That's true, yeah.
And then look very bad against people who are good.
Then they fight someone who's not even that good, like merely pretty good. Yeah, that's true.
Because they are fake, because they are fake good fighters.
Yeah, and Jake Matthews has also fake improved.
Yeah.
More so than Phil.
Both of them have.
Well, yeah, but in a different way. Like, Jake Matthews would also be a contender. In fact, I think I also added him to the upcoming most, and it's important you pronounce the quotes, most improved, i.e. the most capital T technical award. But, yeah, I guess that's true. They're both in that camp.
I mean, I guess we were saying, who is the biggest athletic cheater in the UFC? And it's probably Dricus.
Yeah.
The one with the least visible, like...
That's true.
Skill set. It's probably Dricus.
He's not even trying to look like he knows any techniques. It is truly don't fight like Dricus du Plessis. Do not do it. Unless you want me to love you forever. In which case, yes, do that. And then don't get better. Okay, fine.
It's gotta be Dricus.
Yeah, 2-time award winner. New to the UFC, new to our radar as a result. And yet, picking up 2 Handies in his first year with the organization, Dricus du Plessis.
It says bad things about us, that we're like nominally a technique podcast. That we've given our most fun fighter award to someone who we've literally just said sucks under our own metrics.
Yeah, that's why he's fun.
Yeah.
I think, you have to...
I agree.
You know, Phil, that you can, to like, when you know the rules, you know how things are supposed to be done, it gives you a different kind of appreciation for when things work without following any of the rules. And that's Dricus. He's special because I know exactly why it shouldn't work.
Great.
All right. That brings us on to a category which just won't go away. Now, Phil, while you're introducing this, and it's one nominee, I want you to explain to me what this award actually commemorates.
So it is obviously Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fight of the year, and it commemorates the fact that the UFC just kept booking this fight as it became more and more implausible to make.
Yeah.
Back when they first started making Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fights, they were reasonable fights to make because Nick Lentz was quite high up in the featherweight division,
right? And
Charles Oliveira was on the rise, and then. But once Charles Oliveira moved to a new weight class and Nick Lentz started to fall off a bit, it became baffling that they kept making these fights.
They should make another one.
Yeah. And unfortunately, with like big lanky submission violence, Brazilian submission and violence machine against like, suddenly, shockingly fading, gritty, stumpy guy, there's only really one nominee and only one real winner this year. And it's Brad Riddell is unfortunately our Nick Lentz of the year, and Renato Moicano is, of course, our Charles Oliveira.
That's a real slap in the face to Brad Riddell.
I know. I feel really bad. To
make him a Nick Lentz stand-in. So it doesn't. I think in previous years I've been under the impression that this award commemorates pointless series of fights, but now, this year it appears to commemorate a fight which simply reminded you of Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, there's a gap that needs filling every year.
This is such an inexplicable category. I say it can't ever go away. We could replace and change every other award in every year to come, and I still want to have this category that I can't wrap my head around. Okay.
I'm glad that it continues to puzzle you.
Riddell Moicano, sure. I guess that is, in some way or another, a Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fight. Great.
Right.
Okay, that brings us up, and I'm really honored that I'm the one who gets to introduce this, so you can hear the sort of the note of derision and disgust in my voice. This is, of course, the Phil McKenzie Award for Best Ritual Manslaughter of an Aging Fighter, also known as the Old Bastard Had It Coming Award, perhaps to be known in future as the Glue Factory Award.
It's been a good year.
It's the Glue Factory is operating in a massive surplus. There simply is not a large enough market for glue. There's not enough demand for the supply they have created. First up, and if this can only be the top contender in the Phil McKenzie category, it's the Cheeto Vera versus literally anybody he fights. Because they just keep feeding him old guys. You know, previously they gave him Frankie Edgar, but this year they gave him Dominic Cruz. I think you might argue that Rob Font was starting to fall off around the time they gave him to Cheeto Vera. He just keeps, people turn out to be old the moment that they step into the cage with Cheeto. Then we've got Chris Gutierrez versus Frankie Edgar. Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. Claudio Puelles versus Clay Guida. This is depressing.
I mean, it's also it's a bit of a Darren Elkins kind of fight, because you just look at it and you're like, oh, Clay Guida's going to dive directly into a submission in this fight, isn't he? He's just going to instantly dive into it. Very
really
good.
True.
Well done, UFC matchmakers.
By the way, we should have also considered for the Elkins Johnson Award, Clay Guida versus, who's the old Brazilian man? Leonardo Santos. That was another one with an incredibly predictable thing in which both fights happened. It's very much in the same way as the actual Elkins versus Johnson fight. Okay.
Absolutely.
Next up, once again, Rockhold versus Costa.
Of course.
Don't think it's going to win this one. Not entirely clear not enough of a gap. They're both aging.
They tried to book it as one of these.
Yes.
That's one of the things that makes it such a fantastic fight, is it was obviously booked as a prime piece of...
That's true.
Young athlete slaughtering time. It was only that Rockhold was so angry, and Paulo Costa is already struggling with his own loss of masculinity.
Yeah, they were trying to juice Costa up with Rockhold's name, and what actually happened is that Rockhold etched his name in stone forever. Okay, Ioana Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang. Depressing. Sam Alvey versus Sam Alvey's last 9 opponents. Not as depressing, much funnier actually. Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington. And we already mentioned Dominic Cruz versus Cheeto Vera. We've also got Robbie Lawler versus Nick Diaz. And then, in a fitting bit of poetic justice, or injustice rather, Robbie Lawler fighting Brian Barberena. So Phil, you must be feeling giddy and possibly semi-erect right now. Tell me, who stands out in your mind after hearing that?
I mean, it's a tough year with a lot of quality. There was a lot of glue made in a lot of different ways. We haven't really had this applied to female fighters much before. Ioana Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang performance, where she just got, I think it was the fact that she just got obliterated on the floor where she always used to. That's one of the real key points that you need for one of these things, is where someone used to be really good at something.
Yeah, her impenetrable,
they just get absolutely thrashed there.
Takedown defense just getting broken in half.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, maybe this is because Weili Zhang is a good wrestler, and then you think about it, and you're like, no, it isn't, is it?
Yeah.
I think the Robbie Lawler duology worked really well together, because the Lawler-Diaz fight was one where people looked at it and they were like, you know what? Despite the fact that he looked like absolute shit, he had an okay showing of himself in that fight. A lot of volume, and eventually got broken, but he tried his best. And, at least you can take away the fact that, like, Lawler also, like, managed to look all right against him. And, maybe Robbie Lawler can still compete with people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take something positive away from it. And then you have Lawler Barberena directly afterwards to be like, no. Robbie Lawler is also completely shot.
Yep.
He's got no punching power left. Like, he can just wade through volume in order to return one, big punch. The punch just isn't that big anymore.
Yep. And here's a guy, by the way, who's quite easy to compare to an earlier version of Nick Diaz. Arguably not as good as Nick Diaz at his prime at the things he does. And he just Nick Diaz Robbie Lawler's face off.
Just looked at it and you were like, oh yeah, that's how shot these guys are. Very shot. Oh, it was a nice, like, framing technique to have those two kind of back to back. Like, oh yeah, that's how bad it can be. And all the things you thought about how Robbie Lawler looked okay in that Diaz fight, they were completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me cast, just before we decide on that, let me cast a tentative vote for Sam Alvey. I don't even remember who it was that crushed him. Again, it was like literally 9 losses in a row. Because nominally, Phil, the point of the Phil McKenzie Award is to, through sheer attrition, persuade an aging fighter that they are finally too old to continue competing. And it took a long time. It took a very long time. So long that people were genuinely asking, people who like stick up for fighters' rights and for their greater contract negotiating powers and everything, were all like, literally, why is Sam Alvey still here in the UFC? He should be cut. What is happening? He retired this year. So
has he actually retired?
He retired. Yeah. Now he may come back, but which as often happens. But yeah, he retired from the sport because of his 9th consecutive loss. I don't know if it's actually 9, but it is actually very close to that. It could very well be 9. I'm not going to look it up. But so this does seem to sort of be in the spirit.
Are you sure he's retired? Because his Wikipedia page does not say that he has, and all it says is that UFC recommended that he retire after his final fight against whoever it was, Brendan Allen or
I'm
whatever.
pretty sure. Maybe it's just that he finally got cut.
No, he got cut. Finally cut him, but he's still listed as an active MMA fighter. The person who the Glue Factory is meant to teach the lesson to has not learned it.
That's true. Oh, you're right. The top article is, yeah, he should retire. Sam Alvey, UFC recommended retirement. Oh, okay. Let's just while we're looking at it, here's an MMA Mania article. This is Alvey's statement. Well, shit. I swear I used to be good. I lost a step somewhere, but my family got to see me fight live. I'm fine, but my pride hurts right now. Love you guys, even the haters.
All he needs to do is get that lost step back. And he'll be ready for another run at the UFC.
Yeah, and Alvey himself said they recommended he retire, but they'll let him get the last fight in his contract. It was kind of like, you're probably not going to retire, but we're going to say we recommend it. We'll see what happens. So I don't know. He hasn't fought since. He does seem at least somewhat amenable to the idea of retiring. Why wouldn't he be? But no, he has not officially retired. So I take it all back. Do we give this award to 2 Robbie Lawler fights as like a perfect 2-part story?
I think it comes down to the Lawler duology, which is again like very good, very well constructed. Also, I want to give a shout out to Chris Gutierrez versus Frankie Edgar. Mm-hmm. This was also very well constructed in its own way.
That's true. That's also in the spirit.
Yeah, because this one was one you looked at it and we looked at it and we were like, and this looks kind of winnable.
Yeah,
it's kind of winnable. This guy, he's not all that big for bantamweight. He's not that difficult to take down.
He's not like a terrifying athlete.
Yeah. Then the actual fight started, and you're like, man, he's a lot bigger than Frankie Edgar, and man, he is 3 times faster than Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
And this is just hideous.
And I didn't think he was a huge puncher, but he is just crushing Frankie with everything he lands and making him look silly and slow and yeah.
So I think, and because that's the real, that's the other thing that the old bastard had it coming award should do. It should really drive an unexpected sliver of the consciousness of mortality into your heart as you watch it.
Just an extra little bone of humiliation in your throat.
Yeah, you should just look at it and you should just be like, oh God, age and death comes for us all. And I think that wasn't really worked well because, that's what you kind of felt watching it. Is that you were like, oh, I thought this might be bad, but it's actually so much worse than I thought it would be.
Okay, so is it Gutierrez Edgar, or is it the setup punchline of Lawler Diaz and Lawler Barberena?
I think maybe it's the setup punchline of Lawler Diaz and Lawler Barberena.
Frankie Edgar did retire, though. He actually did retire, right, after Gutierrez? Yeah,
that's right. So it served its purpose,
yeah.
I think, yeah. And it took me off guard. Lawler Diaz was, they both, Diaz looked absolutely terrible. Really. And Lawler looked okay-ish, but Lawler has also looked dreadful in all his other fights that he's had lately.
Mm.
So it wasn't really that surprising to see him looking super bad against Barberena. I think the Gutierrez one. Edgar retired afterwards. Again, it was surprisingly evil, the actual fight itself.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think it's the a really strong list of contenders this year. As said, we're drowning in glue out here. But Gutierrez snuffing out the old workhorse Frankie Edgar. Will be the one for the year.
The inevitable onward march of time. Which is always the sort of the sort of thing that Phil wants to make us think about in the middle of our fun awards show.
Hey.
All right, so now you have to introduce the inverse award.
Yeah. So this is the how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man award, which is the one for when people turn back the clock a bit and people old fighters get to suddenly reassert themselves over a younger crop of contenders, and we can all go away with a little warmth in our heart or whatever.
They somehow they scrabble over a pile of melting bones and severed horse hooves, and they climb out of the glue vat for one last defiant victory.
And for our nominees, we have Rafael Asunciao versus Victor Henry. We have Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland. Francisco Trinaldo versus The World. Michael Johnson versus Mark Giacchese. And Jim Miller versus Nicholas Motta. And again, I think it's actually a pretty strong year. It was a strong year for glue, but it was also a strong year for some stirring escapes from the vat.
I think this may be, how there is this impression that more and more famous people keep dying every year. And in reality, it's just because we have now accrued enough pop culture and international media that we just know a lot more famous people. And they're all getting old. So it's inevitable. It feels like, oh my God, they're dropping like flies, but half these people are Barbara Walters just died. She's 93. What do you expect? So are both of these categories going to continue to grow in strength going forward as we just have a growing roster of aging fighters to either, spit back in defiance or, finally succumb to the sands of time?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a function of the maturity of the sport.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's just that we're, and also that, the sort of technical level of the sport means that you just get more chances that someone's going to come up against an old guy that is in fact might be a big athletic gulf, but it's also technical gulf can still be big enough.
Right. So this is a not quite as crowded, but an equally competitive category. My first vote is obviously for Sun Tzu versus Henry. Not only was the fight awesome, was it a perfect type of this kind of fight because Henry tried his ass off to be the young man and was coming in off of an incredible performance. But Sun Tzu had looked utterly shot before too. And it turned out to be truly a classic Sun Tzu fight with a few new wrinkles. Like a real veterans fight. The other one that I'm most interested in is honestly Michael Johnson, Mark Jacasey.
I think it's Assunção Henry.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. One, it is the most divisionally relevant, apart from like Thompson Holland, I guess. It's also like in a really good division. There was every reason to assume that Rafael was just going to get punted out of that division.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's old and because it's a viciously competitive and athletic and skilled division. Victor Henry has looked great. He fights, as you said, he naturally fights the kind of style feels like it's going to just push an old man out, in terms of particularly one who's never really won his fights on the clearest of margins.
That's true.
And also, yeah, like Victor Henry didn't have a bad fight. Assunção just had a good one.
Yeah.
You can't really say that of Johnson Jacasey.
He just straight up, that's true. Yeah, he just straight up outclassed a good fighter trying his best.
Whereas, Johnson Jacasey is, it's like if Ankalaev just kept standing with Blachowicz because he was sure that he was winning.
Yeah, that does take away something from it. I do want to give Michael Johnson some credit because we have been noting for ages that he continues to improve as a technician. And as a strategist. And it really stands out in my mind because it was maybe the only fight I can think of where Michael Johnson's best round of the fight was round 3. Where he just continued building on the lead that he had and asserted himself in that round, but he did have a lot of help from Jacasey. And, yeah.
Also, potentially, I think, for you at least, I felt like this was a turning around on Michael Johnson kind of moment. Because it's always been like, I've always been the one who's been like, I like Michael Johnson. I think he's cool.
Yeah.
And this was the one where now, after this one, you were like, this was great from Michael Johnson.
Yeah. Well, I have had a complicated relationship with Johnson for a long time. Because as I said, I have been pointing out how good he is in these little subtle ways. I've always known he's a great fighter. I just, I think he's kind of a shitheel. But yeah, it did really endear me to him. I mean, fair or otherwise, it absolutely, I found myself rooting very hard for Michael Johnson. So yeah, that's fair. So before we select, can I just get your thoughts on a live update, Phil? They have just made Rafael Assunção versus Kyler Phillips. Which of these two old man categories will that fight fall into in next year's Handies?
I'm going to say neither. I think that
classic centrist answer. Disgusting.
I think Assunção's just going to lose because he's going to be chasing Kyler Phillips around in a circle like he did Garbrandt.
I feel that it is in too many ways reminiscent of Assunção versus Ricky Simón, and I fear that is what's going to happen. So,
but Ricky Simon's much better than Kyler Phillips, though.
It's true, but the freakish athleticism, the outright aggression, and the very strong wrestling, Kyler Phillips has all these things. So, we'll see. Time will tell. All right, this moves on to one of my personal favorites because this really gets into the sort of the difficult to define nature of what it is that my personal criteria for a great knockout. This is the worst KO of the year, the dumbest, the least aesthetically pleasing, the least emotionally fulfilling knockout of the year. And, Phil, you've done something here. This is interesting. There appear to be 3 Cheeto Vera fights.
Even though he only had 2 fights in 2022. And,
that's weird.
And then one of them was a stoppage. That's crazy.
And then another nominee appears to say, any other KOs Cheeto has ever gotten.
That's right.
One of those was a liver shot KO. Is that the dumbest KO, Phil?
Probably was, yeah.
Shut up. No, it wasn't. All right, I'm forced to read Cheeto Vera, Frankie Edgar. Pretty sure that was last year. Cheeto Vera, Dominic Cruz. Okay. Again, pretty awesome knockout if you ask me, but fine. Cheeto Vera, Brad Pickett. That was at least 4 years ago. Okay, and then we move on to Cyril Gahn, Tai Tuivasa. Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw. And then we just kind of had to add as a lump category all of the other countless injury TKOs that have squandered really exciting main event bookings. Largely, it seems, in the back half of this year. We had Alan Cater. We had Ortega Rodriguez. There was also
Aspinall Blades.
Aspinall Blades. In a very similar vein, although this was a less enticing fight, but one I was enjoying. There was Blachowicz Rakic. Also had a weird, very similar knee injury just happen out of nowhere. So yeah, like maybe all those should honestly be listed. I'm pretty sure all those went down as TKOs. But there were a lot of them, and they were not satisfying, and so they deserve to be mentioned. But obviously the worst of that type is Sterling Dillashaw. It brings up all sorts of issues of like corruption and it was a complete, like the UFC apparently and Dillashaw, everyone I assume except for Sterling, who I'm sure thought he was fighting a fit opponent, conspired to essentially cheat the fans. Like this was a premeditated worst KO of the year. So it's kind of the front runner for me.
Yeah, I think it's got to be that one. I think for aesthetics, you could maybe argue Gahn Tuivasa just because he's got that terrible tendency to Donkey Kong his way to against, which I personally just find very funny.
Yeah.
When he's done, because he's like this cautious technician from the outside. As soon as he gets someone hurt, he's just like flailing Donkey Kong punches at them.
Here's a great technician who reveals when he is definitively winning that he does not know how to throw a combination.
But yeah, for all the hideous grossness around it, the fact that it should have been stopped like halfway through round 1, it managed to make it into round 2. The fact that of all the fights which were stopped by weird injuries, this was the most enticing one.
Yeah, right.
And just the general disgusting nature of it all. It's got to be Sterling Dillashaw.
Just a genuine ripoff. Like they literally got people's money. Some people probably were convinced to pay for this pay-per-view because of that fight. That was the one that put them over the edge because it was a really interesting matchup. And then just everyone involved knew beforehand that it was, in fact, not an interesting matchup. It was a sham. It's got to be.
It was a sham. It should have been stopped almost immediately, and instead it went on for 7 of the most gross minutes that I've had in recent memory.
Yeah. And also, my sympathy often being for Aljamain Sterling, who deals with some of the most insane hate I've ever seen from MMA fans. He didn't deserve to have to go through that either. You're going to go out there and just make a dude beat a guy who has one arm for 7 minutes? I don't know. Yeah, Sterling Dillashaw, runaway winner of the worst KO of the year. Barely a KO. Okay. Brings us to another category. Phil, take it away.
We have the Spike Carlisle Award for the worst vibe of the year. And coming in hot, we have, of course, Paddy Pimblett. Roman Dolidze stays here despite, his love of Jess.
He's not going to win, I'll tell you that. He had 8 months of the year, 9 months, worst vibe, 100%. He can't win now. He's redeemed himself enough.
Khamzat Chimaev, I think someone who has just gotten stronger over the course of the year.
Mm-hmm.
The catastrophic missing weight, the talking shit afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and the trying to fight people, just calling out like Pereira and stuff.
Calling out everyone who doesn't actually want it. Like, there are relevant matchups that have been offered to him that he does not want. He's doing who else has done this in the past? There are some other fighters who have notoriously just called out people like didn't Bigfoot Silva try to fight a middleweight at some point?
Yeah, I mean, Colby Covington, obviously.
Yeah.
The classic example of come up to welterweight and fight me, Dustin Poirier, you coward. It's like, what?
Yeah, just that kind of pure clout chasing behavior that's a bad vibe.
But he was calling, because it was because he called out Burns for a rematch at 185. What?
Yeah, shut the hell up, you fucking goon. And the last nominee, sorry.
And the last nominee, Giga Chikadze.
Your personal nemesis, although I feel like he's somehow
again, started strong, then went quiet after Keita beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, he kind of got what he had coming and has been overshadowed since, I think, by Cheeto.
Yeah.
Why is Cheeto on here? Is he a bad vibe for you?
No, not really. I don't really mind Cheeto as a person. He's just
right? He's kind of a charming dickhead. Like, he's gotten more arrogant and he's still charismatic. Yeah.
I don't hate him as a person.
Okay. Fair enough.
He's definitely nowhere near worst vibe. So, I mean, I think this is one of those ones where I think Paddy Pimblett would be the logical choice.
Yeah.
But really thinking about it, Khamzat Chimaev has been really annoying.
Yeah.
Really annoying. He was rearranged that, they rearranged that fight card where he beat Kevin Holland or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he was just he didn't, who was he meant to be fighting then?
I'll find out real quick. I do not recall. He kind of single-handedly rearranged that entire card, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he was fighting Nate Diaz. He was offered the biggest layup imaginable. Now think of how dreadful Nate Diaz looked.
Jesus Christ. And then and was completely unapologetic.
It's just I destroy everyone or whatever it was.
Yeah, his same increasingly tired routine, doing catchphrases, and then he and then went on to just start ruthlessly calling out both the 170 and 185 champion. I think immediately after he's like, I'll crush Islam or whatever, and it's or not Islam, Usman or Edwards, whoever it was who was at the champion at that point. And you just fucking blew past the 170 limit. That's a bad vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because it sours such a prospect, you really want to have good feelings about a guy like Chimaev. You at least want to be interested. And now it's I don't even know how compelled I am to see him fight, because I don't know what level of professionalism I can actually expect.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think the thing would have been he should have just been I can't make 170 anymore. I'm coming for you, everyone at 185.
Yeah.
You just should have, started calling out relevant weights, not instantly trying to go for the style layup champion. And doesn't appear to have a fight booked, and you can't help but think that that's at least partially due to his tendency of calling out really stupid people to fight.
Yeah.
So I think he wins it this year. Sorry, Paddy. You tried hard, but it wasn't enough.
Yep. Just not quite good enough, really, even at being annoying. to to really deserve. Really kind of the only thing you're pretty good at, and you still fell short. Isn't that the Paddy Pimblett story? No, actually, I guess the Paddy Pimblett story would be if we right now give all these reasons why Chimaev obviously wins and then give it to Paddy anyway.
That would also be very good.
But no, fuck him. I refuse. I refuse. Okay. Now our next category comes with a lot of text. What I suggest is that we actually alternate reading the examples that justify these nominees. This is, of course, the best post-fight rationalization. Something MMA fighters, and really all competitors, to be honest, all professional competitors are really good at. And in some part, it is necessary. In other parts, it can be a thing that, that like covers up some kind of PTSD that you never ever get over. But, the point being, fighters in particular are especially good at rationalizing unexpected defeats. And, so first I will just name the nominees and then we'll alternate reading the examples. So first up is not actually a fighter. It is Ramzan Kadyrov rationalizing Magomed Ankalaev's draw, not even a loss, against Jan Blachowicz. So he's rationalizing on Ankalaev's behalf. Paddy Pimblett justifying his robbery win over Jared Gordon. Chris Curtis still not quite over the loss to Jack Hermanson. Chito Vera rationalizing Petr Yan's fight for him and using that to project his own rationalization about a previous fight. And Rose Namajunas, to me, automatic frontrunner. Some of the most humiliating rationalizations ever after that Esparza fight, which has already won for being clearly the worst fight of the year. So first up, what did Ramzan Kadyrov have to say after Magomed Ankalaev essentially refused to win the fight with Jan Blachowicz?
Well, he took to the internet and explained and had a very baffled take on why Dana White didn't simply use Dana White's own infinite powers of sport rigging that he presumably possesses to ensure that the quote-unquote right outcome happened. And he said, Dana White, what happened to you? You were a normal, principled man, and today you took the championship belt out of the ring without handing it to the clear winner. Or has politics entered the UFC ring and requires you to referee dirty? It's a sport, Dana, be honest. An example from Mehrbek Kasiev, ACA League, who stops any juggling in the league, any bias, demanding objectivity, and not mixing sports with politics. Hey, Dana White, where are you going? Save the face of the league, your own face. Admit your mistake, give the belt to the real winner, and apologize for this show. Save your league's reputation.
Yeah. Ramzan Kadyrov admonishing Dana White for mixing politics and sports.
So good.
Is truly baffling. The levels of cognitive dissonance happening there. The guy has his like pudgy sons beating up kids 40 pounds lighter and 3 years younger than them on a regular basis. But I also like that it is a dictatorial way of thinking, because he is apparently under the impression that Dana White could just refuse to acknowledge this decision and just give the belt to Magomed anyway.
Simply change it. Just change it.
Just change
Why wouldn't
it.
you do that? Don't let politics influence. Don't let politics go into the sport. Just use your infinite power to change the outcome.
That's good. That's
Very
good. And really doing a lot of work for Ankalaev. I mean, saving him some effort there. Very considerate. Okay, Paddy Pimblett, after Jared Gordon, said, I won the first 2 rounds and then coasted in the third. Thank your lucky stars, Phil, by the way, that I'm not doing a Scouse accent. I knew I was 2 rounds up, so I didn't want to do anything dangerous and risk losing the fight. I knew for a fact that I won the first 2 rounds pretty easily.
Again, very good.
Is that even a rationalization? It's sort of just a refusal to face reality.
I mean, yeah. After that first round, if he came back and he was like, yep, it's in the bag. I am dominating
Yeah.
Jared Gordon's left hand with my chin.
Also, like, the fact that his rationalization is him admitting to coasting, as if that's a defense.
Yeah.
The thing that everyone agrees you should not ever do.
It's also like, that's the round that you have the argument for winning.
You're right.
That's what your win hinges on, Patty.
Yeah, that's the one.
It doesn't hinge on you winning first round, which any sane person knows you lost.
Yeah, I definitely won the first, but that's okay. I thought I could give away to 3, and I was right.
Except, yeah.
Shut the fuck up. I need British insults for this kind of idiocy. I'm tempted to say words like pillock and
yes.
and Burke and other words like this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, take it away.
So we have Chris Curtis, who was incredibly salty after his loss to Hermanson, flipping him the double bird.
And during the loss to Hermanson was incredibly salty.
Obviously. And he said, afterwards he said, what a fucking waste of everyone's time. Sorry, London, I tried. Should have prepped for a track meet instead.
Yeah.
What makes this one really great is that then went back on it and he said how nice Hermanson was.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I should have just, he had a good strategy. He was such a nice guy. I shouldn't have been salty. I just let it get to me. And then, months later, Jack Hermanson lost to Roman Dolidze. And what did Chris Curtis say on Twitter about it?
Who was in Dolidze's corner, for all I know, just to get vicarious revenge on Jack Hermanson. And he said, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, way to go, Roman Dolidze. I guess running didn't work this time. So he still, despite making up, has not actually let it go. And thinks that the only reason he lost is because Hermanson is a coward. Should this be the second time in the show I pull up some punch stats? Let's go ahead and check just how cowardly Jack Hermanson was. Oh, that's right. Chris Curtis landed 43 significant strikes. Jack Hermanson landed 100. So that's the track meet for you.
Tremendous.
All right, next up, Cheeto Vera, sort of using Piotr Jan as a vehicle for his own rationalization. I've been there before, he said. Was this after the loss to Sean O'Malley? Do you recall?
Yes, this was after the Sean O'Malley loss for Jan.
I've been there before, says Cheeto. I got robbed against Song Yadong. I never wasted a day of energy complaining or crying. I was like, fuck it. Give me another fight. They give me the O'Malley fight, and I fucking knock him out. Sort of rubbing salt in the wound, too.
I think one of the best things about this is, Cheeto Vera, notorious, stoic acceptor of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how well he accepted that loss against Sun Yadong, as he wrote it in his in his interview there,
or the fight back in the day against Davy Grant, in which he was definitely not throwing a tantrum even while the fight was still going on, and cheating because he couldn't, literally fouling Davy Grant because he couldn't figure out how to not keep getting taken down.
He's just a very philosophical guy, Cheeto. Just as he says, never waste energy complaining or crying.
No.
Ever.
No, he cries very efficiently. But I also just like how ostensibly trying to console Piotr Jan, he really just wants to talk about himself and how he was robbed, and then also, I beat Sean O'Malley's ass, which you didn't. Unclear what he was really trying to do for Piotr there.
I think he was also trying to get a fight against Piotr Jan, so it was at least partially him just trying to annoy him.
Yeah. Well, it would have worked on me. Okay, last up.
Of course, Rose Namajunas. I don't get no credit for good defense. She said, stuck to the strategy. I felt as if I landed more shots, I even took her down. None of her takedowns were significant or with any control time. I'd say she hit me with one good punch. Felt like I did the damage. Controlled the fight. Proud of myself because I stuck to my strategy. Know that in all of Carla's fights, she just baits people in. She tries to get people to attack her. Been in Slugfest before. I've gotten my nose broken. I've stood there and shed blood in the octagon. She stuck to the strategy, and she didn't really have any offense. She was whiffing at air the whole time, so I thought I won.
Just a baffling gap between Rose and reality, betrayed by that statement.
Yeah, this is just great. I mean, I think, so for me, I think it's between Rose and Kadyrov. They're both very, very good.
Yeah.
Both got, like, multiple layers to go. Like, Rose just being like, Rose coming out of, as we've said, the worst fight of all time, and just being like, you guys just don't understand what defense is.
Yeah. You're all plebs.
Come on. Did you not see how cool I looked? And everyone's like, was literally the worst thing I've ever
seen. She's just being drowned out by boos, even as she's saying this.
Yeah. I didn't fight for the critics, you know. This was a fight for me. I get credit for good defense? No.
No.
Oh, that's not how the scoring criteria works, Rose.
Literally no. And also, you don't get the belt for good defense.
Also, like, do love Kadyrov for being like, you doing, Dana? Are you allowing sports to mix with politics?
It is a tough
this
one.
To the right. Don't allow sports to mix with politics. Just give the belt to the right person.
Yeah.
The guy I know at ACA.
And also being Kadyrov.
No politics mixed in at all.
Also being Kadyrov, like his whole thing is mixing sports with politics. Sports are like his main political propaganda machine.
Yeah.
Completely baffling. Again, the cognitive dissonance there. I don't know though. It's not Ankalaev himself, which takes away slightly, but also just Rose, like, I don't know, man. Like, acting like you're Roy fucking Jones after that fight is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, no shit,
like,
she didn't hit you.
Literally everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone else is wrong. I'm right. That was cool. You don't understand that was cool.
At least a bunch of other idiots agree with Kadyrov. No one agrees with Rose. The whole world knows she doesn't, at least did not deserve to win. And that it was not a good performance.
To be fair, there's probably a lot of creepy Rose fans who are just like, oh yeah, absolutely, that was
100%. That's true. She is a female fighter. That's true.
Yes. Those people are insane.
But I haven't seen many of them. Whereas the Kadyrov aligned people, they're everywhere. You can't escape them. So my vote is
I
for
think
Rose.
Again, the sheer scale of the fight to which it happened. I mean, you could argue, there are many ways you can argue that Kadyrov is actually, you know, that Ankalaev did actually deserve to win. Can say that if he wins the first round, he's basically won the fight.
Yeah.
And it was close, and all that other kind of stuff. But Rose, I think Rose coming out of, as we've said, the worst fight ever, and just being just like, no, you guys just don't understand. Not just being like, look, I just had an off night, I just fought like shit. Sorry, it will never happen again. No. Just being like, no, you don't understand. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. You fools just didn't understand what I was doing in there.
This is exactly what I meant to do. I trained 8+ weeks for this. And I succeeded. Yeah, the thing is Kadyrov is complaining about the result. Rose isn't even really defending or complaining about not getting the win. She's defending her performance, which is the worst thing in that entire fight. It's got to be Rose. All right.
Has to be.
Okay, so this moves us on. What's this note you just added, Phil? I don't understand.
I think we have to skip the next award because there's too much overlap. I think the Bumblebee Award for fights that makes things work even when it shouldn't. It really covers athletic cheaters.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So, I think instead we have to go to Henry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will close out the middle section of the awards. And this is a new one of my own conception, just because it sort of follows basically a meme thread. both on this show and the Vivisection that I do with Zane. Love talking about this. One of my favorite characters in the sport, Henry Hooft. And this award is for Henry Hooft's least favorite child. Sort of the preeminent father figure in MMA. Coaches a team of the name of which has, I believe, changed for a 7th time this year. It's now Kill Cliff FC. Great, good marketing. Doesn't make me think that it's some kind of front for like a drug cartel or anything that they keep having to change. They keep having to change their name. Anyway, we did have some notable disappointments to Daddy Henry Hooft this year. Vicente Luque, exposed as a pathetic mortal. Derek Brunson, recidivist, shamelessly backsliding to his old ways. Volkan Oezdemir, so timid that Henry sometimes forgets he's in the same room. And Andre Fialho, one of the newer additions, who is simply the wrong kind of Portuguese. What do you think, Phil? Who has endured the most withering Henry Hooft scowl in the gym this year?
I think it's got to be Andre Fialho, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who you can see the disappointment is just breaking him.
That's true.
He's one of the ones where, like, because most of the time you get at least some measure of reinforcement from the withering Hooft disdain. Fialho just seems like he's someone who's just falling apart under the pressure.
That's true.
Just can't please his dad enough.
That's true. No one has really met the same heights as since Henry Hooft literally walked out of the arena in disgust after Anthony Johnson lost to Daniel Cormier a second time. Like, that's really the pinnacle of Henry Hooft, the disappointed dad. But yeah, I think Fialho is the one who is most clearly. I mean, Oezdemir is a contender for someone who I think is also just clearly just trying his ass off to please father. And there seems to be a lot of pressure happening on Oezdemir, but at least he has the saving grace of being a light heavyweight. Like Fialho, there's just no room for insecurity in Fialho's division, and he just keeps getting completely canned for it. So I think I agree. The least prominent of Henry Hooft's many sons is, one of the least prominent. There's also Angelosa, who is a guy who is sort of going in the midst of the Henry Hooft improvement process, and is trying to get over the timidity that is crushing both Fialho and Oezdemir. But you know, one of the lesser known sons is, fittingly, I think, the biggest disappointment to Father Hooft. So congratulations, Andre. Now, back to the other Portuguese-speaking country with you. Wrong one. Okay. And that concludes the strategy section, which brings us, that concludes the weird shit section or whatever we call it, which brings us to the strategy section, the point of the Handies, where we sort of briefly pretend that this is still a show which is in some way or another about technique and execution on the night of a fight.
G and a G might start the party, but you don't need a G, all you need is Bacardi. Bring a CD and some Bob Marley. This could get heavy like tons of broccoli. Step it up now.
All right, so first up in the strategy section, this one a completely earnest award, really just honoring good showings. The award for best game plan. Whose preparation paid off the most? I don't remember who went last, so Phil, you take it away.
So we have Carla Esparza versus Rose Namajunas. Can this really be here? Bilal Muhammad versus Vicente Luque. Free Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. Juan Francisco Estrada versus Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. And of course, Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway.
I think Carla Esparza's game plan worked perfectly.
Didn't really, though, did it?
Won her the title.
Yeah, but didn't really win.
Okay. All right, fine.
One of the remarkable, that's one of the things about that fight is that there is no winner.
Okay, so that's a fake nominee. Okay, fine. I admit it. Bilal Muhammad, though, our favorite game planner, continues to beat what appear to be substantially more talented fighters with good game plans. And still, what always shocks me, a huge variety of different game plans. Because you could also give a shout out to him for the Sean Brady fight. Even though he was like getting tuned up by Sean Brady, of all people, on the feet, he was also in the process of overwhelming him the entire time.
He's a really good shout. I thought Corey Sandhagen, again, one of those fights where you can point out things that he could do to win this fight, and then once again, he exactly does them.
Yes.
Very rare and infrequent kind of occurrence. Obviously, Alexander Volkanovski completely shutting Max Holloway out of the rubber match. I think Estrada is a good shout because you could see his game plan develop over the course of 3 fights.
Yeah.
And it was such a difficult game plan to stick to.
Yeah.
You could see him like deciding that he can't essentially deciding that he can't concede backward steps to Chocolatito, and then just finding ways to implement that throughout the course of the fight, whether it's standing Chocolatito up with uppercuts, or simply insisting on extending exchanges and trying to force Chocolatito back himself. Just like an incredibly mentally draining performance for him. That was genuinely remarkable. I mean, I think for me, I think it is between that and potentially Bilal, remember the name, Muhammad. I think I might actually give it to Estrada because when I was watching it, I found myself so impressed by the level of mental fortitude that he was displaying. Because it's one thing to, grit out a tough fight, and one thing to grit out a tough fight and just, battle through being hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's quite another thing to just keep a very mentally exhausting game plan working for long periods of time. Is that he was just, it was just move the feet and strike, and move the feet and strike, and keep every element of your defense running for as long as humanly possible. And again, you could see that he tried to do that in their previous fight. This was the one where he actually executed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the game plan, which also seemed to account for the many mini comebacks that Gonzalez would have along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were rest periods that seemed so. He seemed to go in and out of them so easily and stay so relatively safe during them that they had to have been. He had to have just been anticipating it and know that there were going to have to be points where he was going to basically give Chocolatito the initiative and the momentum and have to fight his way back in with those brilliant combinations and footwork tactics that he was dominating the first part of the fight with. Probably one of his best body punching performances too, when I think in the past it's been more defined by Chocolatito's body work.
Absolutely.
I will also give a shout, though, to Volkanovski Holloway again, because this was also the culmination of a 3-fight series where Volkanovski took all the information, taking more lumps along the way, too, I think, because he very clearly beat Holloway in their first fight. Holloway made some really precise adjustments for the second fight, and Volkanovski had to adapt over the course of it. And then this was him basically starting from the midpoint of the second fight, but even more fine-tuning his technique, and adding a few things. Like I noted when it happened that there were a lot of opportunities in the second fight for him to just fire back off combinations, like knowing that Holloway is going to be pursuing him after he resets and taking his head offline with a short right hand. That was one move I was looking for in particular. And he started landing it almost instantly in the second fight. Like just like Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. This is a tough category, honestly, because that's another one where, you look at the fight, you get this fulfilling experience of pointing out some key adjustments that could be made, some key things that could be learned from a previous fight, and all those things have been paid attention to in the fighter's camp.
like, in fact, Santagan's previous fight against TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, you cannot keep giving your back up.
Yeah.
And, and you're going to need a better counterpunching game, and then lo and behold.
And the Dillashaw fight itself was already an improvement in footwork from the... Or wait, no, did Petr Yan or Dillashaw come first? Petr Yan came first.
Yeah, Yan was first, then Dillashaw.
And in the Dillashaw fight, I think also he showed improved footwork. It was a better back foot fight than we had seen from him before. And this was a better back foot fight with really well-chosen wrestling entries and really well-chosen, like, crashing counters to stop the aggressor to actually stop the aggressor in his tracks, much like Volkanovski's counter right hand. That's tough. I think just because it's one of the few boxing matches we've gotten to talk about this year, I think I'll just side with you and say Juan Francisco Estrada. I mean, that fight is in a much better developed sport with a much longer history against an all-time great. I mean, Holloway is too, but that means a lot more, I think, in boxing to be an all-time great at this stage. And
it is much harder to outfox someone, I think, the boxer.
Yeah, and having gone into that fight, having said that, like, the clear impression was that no matter what twists and turns their fights had taken, that Chocolatito was just the better fighter. No longer clear at all after that fight. It was in a way impossible for it to be as dramatic a shift as like the Volkanovski-Holloway matchups, but in its way was just as dramatic because I just didn't expect to be so enamored with Estrada's work in a fight with a fighter as good as Chocolatito.
Yes, and it was also the way that the dynamic that had been established in the Volkanovski-Holloway fights was ways, at least, that we knew that Volkanovski could and would out-adjust him.
Mm-hmm.
That, the Estrada fight showed us something different.
Right. Yeah, it was not clear at all that he could out-adjust him. Volkanovski just built on the adjustments he'd already successfully made. Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, that brings us, as is often the case on the Handies, to the inverse. The Hey That Worked award for shitty game plans that triumphed regardless. I think this is probably a category where, even as we talk about it, maybe we'll think of others. There probably should be more nominees than we have. But certainly at the top of the list, a deserving first nominee. Matt Schnell versus Sue Murderji. Awesome comeback. Completely improbable. By the way, one just happened. Said Nurmagomedov versus Said Yakub Kakramanov.
Yep. Completely
Nonsense comeback guillotine in a fight where he was getting completely dominated. So we'll have that as a nominee as well. Chito Vera versus anyone. Thanks, Phil. Phil Rowe versus Nico Price, where one fighter's game plan was working until it stopped working, and a fighter who didn't have a good game plan won. And finally, returning nominee, Joaquin Buckley versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which I had to look up to ensure. And even now, I'm not sure. Joaquin Buckley did win that fight, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, deserved to.
He went in there against the wild punching, I think, judo black belt. And his entire idea was to spend all of his energy wrestling him. And he gassed, which is a thing that usually happens to Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and nearly lost because of it.
Fantastic.
And just toughed it out. So what do you think? What stands out to you here?
Schnell Sumadaji.
More than Chito Vera.
Yeah, because Chito Vera, I think, has at least learned a lesson. Stupid lesson that I hate. He's learned a lesson. He's immortal and he's huge. He's just like, I'm just going to hang around. And eventually, someone will just accidentally walk into a punch that I throw. And, like, sure, it's working for you now, Cheeto. You can just throw two punches around, and nothing the other guy does will ever hurt you. Can at least argue that he's following he's following incentives that have been given to him by his fights. Matt Schnell has been told by everything that he has done in his MMA career, pretty much, don't try and outpunch these people. Don't do it, Matt Schnell. He was being told in the Sumaderji fight, don't try and outpunch him, Matt Schnell. What are you doing? And it was the fact that Matt Schnell was just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Completely insane world. It was like the Rose Namajunas thing, but at the absolute opposite end of the spectrum.
And much cooler as a result.
Yeah. It was just like, of course I can outpunch these people. Are you implying that I have some kind of, like, bad chin?
I'm pussy, said Matt Schnell.
Yeah. But what are you talking about? Do you not realize who I am? I'm gonna go and outpunch this guy. And then he just went and did it. Tremendous.
Yeah. Well, kind of. I mean, he kind of got outpunched as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Yeah, he was getting absolutely killed, and then he was just like, no, I'm just going to keep doing it. I just need to do it harder.
Yeah.
I just need to go after him more. What else would I do? And he did it, and he won.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was awesome.
Especially because whenever this happens now, it is sort of Matt Schnell unlearning the actual improvements he himself has made. Because Matt Schnell significantly tightened up his striking. And like the fight he had with Tyson Nam, that was like, very close. It's still, you're worried the entire time that one big punch he's just going to lose. But you do see good footwork, good back foot boxing, nice jabs from Matt Schnell, improving defense. And then there basically come these opponents where it is like the most obvious time not to slug it out with them, like Sumaderji or Pantoja before him, and he just can't resist. He just refuses to believe that it could possibly, it's been a fluke KO like 7 times before. And It's not going to happen this time.
That's why I love it so much.
All right, fine. Matt Schnell, congratulations. Your game plan was not good, but that didn't stop you. Okay, and now finally, the third part of the game planning tripartite. Strategy is for losers award for good game plans that didn't work.
This me?
Yes, sure.
So we have Font versus both Jose Aldo and Chito Vera. Poor fucking Rob Font, man.
I know.
He got cheated so bad in these fights.
These are not bad performances, man.
He really deserved to win in many ways, both of these fights.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jose. I love you, but...
Yeah, and I still love you, Cheeto. And, both of you sort of morally deserved to lose.
Yep. There is, of course, Kamaru Usman in what we have called his greatest title performance in his KO loss to Leon Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of synthesizing together his striking, his clinch game, and his wrestling, ensuring that he's staying on top of the fight, that he's winning rounds consistently, all this kind of stuff. This was the fight that made Kamaru Usman look like he genuinely was a pound for pound talent right until the point where he got knocked out.
Sort of a great artist being given a truly blank canvas and creating a masterpiece on it. And then he turns away to like get a drink of water and the easel falls over and hits him on the head and he dies. That's sort of what that fight was.
Max Griffin versus Neil Magny. Max Griffin obviously being one of the guys who you would expect to be the frog down the proverbial like clinch well is Neil Magny. Someone who's just going to be trapped by their own proclivities into never escaping the deadly clinch vortex of Neil Magny. Then someone who pretty much managed to clamber out by being smart enough and proactive enough, and then just managed to somehow, in doing this, make Neil Magny furiously angry.
Yeah. He actually fought so well, he forced Neil Magny to reveal that he has had that dog in him the entire time.
Yep. Is Tony Ferguson against Michael Chandler. One of the fights which looked like it was set up for a brutal knockout for Tony Ferguson, who instead looked about as good as he has for a really, really long time.
Years, yeah.
And kept Chandler on the end of his reach and hurt him and all this other kind of stuff. And he got his head kicked into outer space for all that work. And then, as we mentioned before, we have Said Yakub Kakramanov versus Said Nurmagomedov. A fight where Said Yakub was beating the crap out of Said Nurmagomedov and constantly taking him down and shucking off his guillotines until he didn't.
Yeah. He had, in fact, justified his refusal to worry too much about the guillotine several times before it actually finished him. This is complete opposite to what usually happens. How many times have we seen a fighter go for guillotines over and over as like their first and only form of takedown defense or counter, and it just works less and less as the fight goes on? Somehow, I don't know. The
performance by him, though, and yes, just a bit tragic. So yeah, for this one, I think it's between Rob Font and Kamaru. You know, I think those are the two. I mean, Rob Font, again, very tragic. That he really, I mean, that it happened twice. This is inverse Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
This is when the opposite of someone being incredibly stupid and getting themselves murked in the same ways. This is someone being really smart and disciplined and then getting murked in the same ways.
Yeah. You could argue that, like, never having really shored up his striking defense in any meaningful way is still a huge error on Rob Font's part. Like, I just don't think he's just not good defensively. He just thinks he has to overwhelm people with strikes. But you got to give him credit for all but successfully doing that. And just getting chinned at the wrong moments.
And he's a big, powerful, diverse puncher.
Yeah.
Who could you could make a very valid case that could just be, we've said it before tons of times. If you're a big puncher, you just need to touch people. Font did all that.
Yeah.
He's a big puncher with huge hands, touched Jose Aldo and Chito Vera repeatedly, and then they just, jumped at him and punched him once towards the end of the round.
Yeah. He's like Corey Sandhagen with power, but without the chin.
Mm-hmm.
Or the defense, to be fair.
So, I think maybe if it's between those two, I think, the sheer tragedy of it, I think, for poor Rob Font. Because Kamaru Usman, it's on a bigger stage. It was a great performance, but I think we've seen that he just matches up well with Leon Edwards.
Right.
He just has good 3-dimensional fights against him.
Yeah.
In their previous fight, I think is more of a continuation. But I think, the sheer tragedy of Rob Font, who had such great, genuinely great, well thought out fights, and then just ended up getting smashed to pieces, and ended up you just thinking, man, I don't think this guy can be a ranked bantamweight anymore, rather than this guy should be fighting for the title. Tragic.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. It's the specific manner in which his good game plans failed to materialize. It's not you so often have the feeling when Corey Sandhagen lost to Petr Yan, stock went up. At no point were you Corey Sandhagen has just gotten shut out of contention. You're he's almost good enough to beat Petr Yan in this fight. He's got to stay here, and I need to see him if he can continue to improve, which he has, to his credit. For Rob Font, you have these great performances, really, where he's just so close to death at 8 different times in those fights. You're this can't be healthy. You got to take a step down. You got to retire something. This is untenable. I do want to give a little shine to Max Griffin, because he is Max Griffin really seems like he could be a don't fight like this guy fighter. I think he's a good enough athlete. He's fast, he's powerful, he has ridiculous conditioning, probably some hard work there, but quite possibly some natural just ability to regenerate his energy. He should be that guy, and instead he has quietly turned himself into a kind of Bilal Muhammad, who comes in with pretty broad strokes, but tailored approaches to each opponent. And I really appreciate the fact that the Neil Magny trap has so much to do with Neil Magny's size. That he's really tall, but willowy. So when you're at range, you freak out. Because he can touch you when you're really far away and you can't lay a finger on him. And then once you tie up, you're like, oh, he's weak as shit. I could do whatever I want. And then you get sucked into the quicksand. Griffin was one of the few guys I have ever seen allow Neil Magny to have lots of space and allow him to come forward and force him to take away his own reach advantage by overextending and countering the tall man and also crushing him with some good low kicks. I think it was a really good performance, and it's only less like tragically fitting for this category, unlike the Font one, because Neil Magny like really earned the victory there because he had to go sicko mode. He had to just accept that things were going horribly, and like it was like watching Neil Magny get his like much delayed revenge on like Lorenz Larkin or Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's like, not again. And he was really defiant and brave. And for Cheeto and Aldo, it was more just like for Aldo, you know, an entire career of being the craftiest dude in the sport and still being an insanely good athlete was a big part of that. And for Cheeto, it's, you know, being Romero, being a tiny Yoel Romero. So yeah, I agree. It's got to be Rob Font.
Hmm.
Two of them too. 2 fights. With almost the exact same structure.
You never want to do the inverse Garbrandt.
No.
You don't want to do the regular Garbrandt, but the inverse Garbrandt is no less tragic.
At least the regular Garbrandt's more fun to watch.
Very true.
You don't feel that bad for Cody in those fights. This one, you have to feel bad for Rob. Okay. Now we come to a banner award category for the Handies. One people look forward to all year and frankly will not stop mentioning to me. Constantly, anytime anything stupid happens, somebody says, this has got to be a top contender for this award.
And then we go on to forget what they've said.
What happens too much? You know? You gotta choose your moments so it helps it stick out in my mind. This is, of course, the worst brain thinking in a fight award. Like it says on the tin. And I think this is you, Phil.
No, I did,
okay.
I did Strategies for Losers. It's you.
God, we're stupid. I'm stupid. Worst brain thinking. Here are your nominees. Magomed Ankalaev sacrifices both legs before trying a single takedown. Israel Adesanya respects Pereira into murking him. Volkan Oezdemir and Paul Craig dare one another to win the fight, pussy. It is time to do a suplex, Michael Chandler. Mark Jacasey being the only person in the room who thinks Mark Jacasey is winning. Sean Strickland quoted as saying, I am just naturally good at defending left hooks.
I don't think he actually said that, but that is essentially how he was approaching the fight.
And Rose Namajunas, defensive mastermind. This is a loaded category, and honestly, I feel like there have to be way more nominees that we just can't think of.
There have to be, right? We're missing out some major ones.
Yeah. But goodness, I really don't know which way to go here. Let's talk it out.
So this is a really tough one. Cause it's the Adesanya. I mean, there's Namajunas is obviously a great one.
Mm-hmm.
She's already won. I mean, she's already won for the worst fight of all time.
Yeah.
There's no way you can't get close to worst brain thinking with that performance.
No, she's got to be a top. If it wasn't just redundant or overly repetitive, she would be a runaway candidate here. Because her worst brain thinking, as we saw in the Rationalization Award, has continued. She, as far as I can tell, she still thinks that she fought perfectly. Again, very curious to see what happens in her next fight with this mental shift.
Yeah,
yeah.
the fight against Gillian Robertson does not exactly fill you with joy.
Yeah.
But then, there's Magomed Ankalaev. The opposite of the Rose fight, where she tried to do everything possible to avoid takedowns, whereas he was just like, no, I'm a really good striker. Saw this guy beat Israel Adesanya mostly on the feet. I'm just going to do that. Not going to take any advantage of the fact that Magomed Ankalaev, that Jan Blachowicz is one of the most, one of the guys where you can literally see his energy bar shrinking the minute you take him down.
Yeah. And in a similar vein to Rose trying for the first time 24 minutes in and suddenly having huge success, it is the dramatic shift in the fight when Ankalaev finally was persuaded by his opponent to try a takedown that really just underscores how stupid his game plan was.
Obviously, Izzy against Barrera called it from the outside that he was going to freak himself out into losing the fight by knockout, and that is exactly what happened. Is at least one of the ones where I can understand more risk that he was facing.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, this is a terrifying person. He's giant and he's extremely durable and he's potentially just one of the hardest hitters in the UFC full stop, let alone at this weight class.
And I am totally sympathetic to the having a possibly permanent mental hang-up because, again, fighting what was clearly the much better fight to actually beat Pereira, it still did get him knocked out in their rematch. So I honestly totally get what Adesanya did, and to fight correctly would have taken a serious amount of discipline and courage and possibly psychotherapy. But he did not fight correctly. That much is clear.
I have a particular fondness for Michael Chandler's suplex on Dustin Poirier, just because it was like, what do you think's going to happen?
I don't even particularly remember the suplex. What did happen? Oh, it was the one that lost him the fight.
What?
It was the one that lost him the fight. It got reversed.
It wasn't, he didn't get submitted off it. It was the one towards the end of the first round. He'd just been winning the round pretty easily. He'd, stunned Poirier against the cage.
Yeah.
And he was just winning it. And then he had him in a grappling situation. And then he was just like, it was like a minute left in the fight. And in the round even. And he was just like, just gonna pick this guy up over my head. And then I'm gonna drop myself on my own head. It's not like I've had any issues gassing out in the UFC so far. Or having strong first rounds. I'm just gonna expend absolutely everything I've got 4 minutes into this round. And then, suplexed himself onto his own head, on Poirier onto Chandler's own head. And then Poirier escaped, then got up, and then, almost finished him.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he was going for a very similar takedown in the sequence that ended the fight. Pretty sure it was like a rear waist cinch lift of some kind. That's more forgivable, though, because literally no one saw Dustin Poirier's reversal and submission win coming, to be fair. But yes, as a very Michael Chandler waste of energy, I get it now. Mark Jacasey's was fucking annoying, wasn't it?
Yeah.
His own coaches were pleading with him. They're like, dude, you are losing the fight. And this has become an annoyingly constant thread in these last few months. I keep seeing fighters either barely winning or not winning, just wasting time showboating. I like swagger in a fight. It's fighting. Again, in any athletic competition, even non-athletic competitions, machismo is part of it. And a guy who just knows he's the shit, that's the kind of confidence you need, and it's often very fun to see. Nothing is more annoying to me than somebody doing it in those circumstances. Especially when I get the impression that you're not even necessarily doing it to get in your opponent's head, but in fact you actually believe the shit you're selling. You think you are...
You actually genuinely think that you're winning, despite the fact that you haven't done nothing to win.
Yeah. And also just on top of it being generally a terrible game plan, where the assumption was that he would just go balls to the wall, Michael Chandler style, trying to wrestle Michael Johnson to do the one thing. The book is written, man. And you just revealed that you can't read.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I guess Sean Strickland spent about a minute not even considering a takedown. That's a bad idea, but I don't think it was enough time to be. I need more examples in one fight for me to call it really worst brain thinking, I think.
It was the fact that he was just like, I would just do it again.
That's true. That's a good post-fight
He saw
anti-rationalization.
Yeah, he saw Pereira be just absolutely crushed under the dominating top game of Israel Adesanya and was just like, I'm going to punch this guy in the face if I ever fight him again.
That's a good
I'm
point.
follow him around in a circle.
All right. All right, so who takes it?
It has, I mean, I don't want to say it, but it does actually, it has to be Rose Namajunas. Is the stupidest thing that anyone did on this.
It's true. It was so winnable.
At least Magomed salvaged a draw.
Yeah.
Like a 10-8 round.
At least he was convinced.
Yeah.
To try to win at some point. Yeah, it has to be Rose.
Has to be.
What are you doing? Carlos, look at Carla's next fight. What the fuck? She gets crushed by this kind of athlete and you're huge compared to her and you have reach and huge punching power. What are you doing? And you prove at multiple points, as you said, that she can't touch you or take you down to save her life. You can
actually take her down quite easily.
Yeah, it has to be. I didn't even want it to be, but it has to be.
It has to be. Like, it is the stupidest thing one has done this year.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, her brain thinking is, as I've said many times, the bulk of the reason that fight was the worst fight of all time.
Oh, yeah.
It's on her shoulders. Okay. Rose Namajunas just taking home the gold, in a lot of categories this year. Next up, a new addition, which I believe Phil literally just thought of.
Well, I mean, we've had this before. We've had best foul. It's been removed at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've renamed it. We have renamed it. It is the Saparbek Safarov kind of memorial award for strategic foulness.
Strategic fouling or strategic foulness, both are one and the same with Safarov.
Yeah. It's that you really have to just come with next level like fouling game.
Yeah.
I think there's only one real person who stands out this year in terms of like strategic fouling. It's obviously Michael Chandler. He's fouled in so many different ways. He's poked people in the eyes. He's grabbed the cage, but I think more than anything, like, his foul against Dustin Poirier is one of these ones that just has to be memorialized because it's all-time great shit.
Yeah. Fish hooking. Punches to the back of the head. Like 9 in a row and then defended with a look of like injured innocence when the referee was like, hey, stop. Who, me? Also, in the spirit of Saparbek Safarov, may he rest in peace. I assume that one of the many diseases he's harbored to has finally taken him out. Not necessarily a foul, but the deliberately blowing blood out of your broken nose into Dustin Poirier's eyes and mouth. That's a Safarov move.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the great things about this is that Chandler comes with this, real motivational speaker kind of vibe to him. He's like, I see you at the top kind of thing. And just like casts himself as this incredibly like wholesome figure who just gets by on, hard work and grit and so on. And he's an all-American boy kind of thing. And then just pulls off one of the most innovatively disgusting fouls I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a real.
Zapperbeck himself would blush.
Or is that a rash? Yeah. Yeah. Chandler is like it's like a hustle grind set kind of guy. Who like, I don't know, is like confronted with like a narrow gap and he like pisses himself to lubricate his body so he can get through. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Is that betraying everything you claim to stand for, or is it the most hustle grind set thing you can actually do? Anything to win.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, man, he used rabbit punches to the, as I said on Twitter, he used rabbit punches in order to set up a fishhook. And which he then uses to pull the mouth open and fill it with his own noseblood. Like,
it's interesting.
That is transitional work at the highest level when it comes to disgusting fouling.
You're fouling in all three phases and several that we haven't thought of yet. Yeah, it's interesting. It just really says something about MMA. We have two award winners in this year's Handies, both of which depend in some part on one fighter just actively putting their blood in another fighter's face. And in the one case, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. The coolest and gayest thing I've ever seen. And in the other, I am viscerally disgusted by it. It all comes down to intent, I suppose. Like, Michael Chandler was...
And also the fact that one of them used his hand to pull open the other guy's mouth to blow his nose into it. Like... Yeah. It was a litany of other fouls, but the one is like, Michael Chandler was like, I gotta win. And Luke Rockhold was like, I think he knew he couldn't win. Yeah. And he was like, I will do anything just to, like, remember me, was the feeling of Luke Rockhold. Merge my genetic material with yours and never forget this night. So yeah, Michael Chandler, only nominee and the only man truly deserving of the Sapirbeck-Safarov stamp of approval. Not a stamp of any kind of vaccination or any other thing. It's a biohazard marker.
the do not enter stamp, yeah. Bring Safarov back, goddammit. He's my favorite disgusting ape on the planet. Okay. That brings us to our last two awards, another sort of paired sequence of awards. This is the most improved, and I hope you can tell by my emphasis that here we honor fighters who have become capital T technical. If MMA is a sport defined by overcorrections, these guys have taken it to a new level. Here are the nominees. Rose Namajunas, once again, becoming more technical than ever before. Alexander Hernandez, kind of continuing along a track he's been on for a while. Brandon Royval had an increasingly technical year. He seemed at one point threatened to become dangerously close to Holly Holm levels of leaf blower kickboxing. Johnny Walker, who proved that it works, that he is in fact improving in exactly the way he needs to, and Juliana Pena for her 25-minute kickboxing masterclass in the rematch with Amanda Nunes. So who's the most capital T technical? It can't be Rose again. Even though it's so obviously her. Because that is
it might be Juliana Pena.
Yeah?
Well, and you know who else it is?
Yeah?
Israel Adesanya.
Oh my god, you're right.
Is Israel Adesanya. It has to be Israel Adesanya. He's so much worse as an MMA striker than he was as a kickboxer.
Oh my god, he's worse as an MMA striker than he was earlier as an MMA striker. You're right.
It's exactly MMA striking stuff that he's doing. He's like a calf kick and a jab.
Oh my god. It's
Israel Adesanya by miles, isn't it?
Yeah, especially because usually the understanding is that a fighter, these guys become capital T technical because they're MMA fighters. Like, they don't know any better. No one has taught them enough about striking fundamentals. They don't have enough striking experience or striking specific coaches to know, like, you know, how subtle, but also how fundamental the improvements they're in need to be. Adesanya is a world-class kickboxer. And he's become an MMA technician. That is depressing.
Remember when Luca Bordon was hyping up the coming to MMA, and he was like, "This guy's great. You guys are going to see what a real like boxer is like in this sport. You know, none of this Wonder Boy business."
Yep.
Then Israel Adesanya has reverted to the basest of all means.
Yep. Meanwhile, Wonder Boy has gotten much worse at all of the MMA stuff he learned, but continues to wreck people with his striking. Eat that, Luca. Yeah, it has to be Adesanya. We didn't even have him listed.
No, not even a competition once you think about it.
Yeah. Wow. All right, and that brings us to the sincere version, the most improved fighter. One of my favorite things to see in all of combat sports. A fighter who actually got better. Phil, give us the nominees.
We have Sam Hughes, Jonathan Martinez, have Eric Anders, who I think we have missed out in the turnaround category.
That's true. In the turn the beating around. Yeah.
Ricky Simone, Cara France, Caitlin Chukagian, and of course, Angela Hill.
Yeah, and this is a competitive category. I put Sam Hughes at the top. She was the first one I thought of because I truly thought she was maybe the worst fighter on the roster. She was like, I have to even remember what her first couple fights were. There was one against a sort of passable striker. Let's see.
Torres?
Tisha Torres, no, it was then against Loma Lookboonmee and then against Luana Pinheiro, who I don't even know if she's still in the UFC. And Sam Hughes, like, it's a wonder she was basically still around after these three performances, because it wasn't that she was just losing. She was getting crushed and just flailing around. Like, I really felt bad for her. I felt like she'd been betrayed by her coaches or something, because she was fighting at this level she clearly wasn't ready for, taking really lopsided beatings, and all she could do was just, like, having no footwork, no punching form, nothing, just like stumble after them face first, trying, like, it was like her fights were like a worse version of like Chris Moutinho versus Sean O'Malley. That was like the extent of her striking ability. And now she's 2-1 in her last three, all good performances, looking very much like a little Bilal Muhammad. Not only gaining the ability to successfully pressure with strikes and put combinations together, to cut off the cage as well, with, you know, mixed results, but hey, we're starting from a baseline of 0 here. And also to mix in and occasionally crush people with her wrestling. So she's really become just a tremendously better fighter. She's not like a world beater by any means, but she started from such a deficit. I've been really impressed with her improvement. Who else stands out to you?
You know what? I think it might be Ricky Simone.
Yeah.
Because I really think of him as being, I thought of him as, you know, unsurprisingly, as being just like, you know, the next generation's Clay Guida.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a relentless wrestler who would occasionally get himself into trouble by being incredibly aggressive, but who was, you know, had the cardio and the endurance and generally the toughness to make sure that you know, that worked in his favor. But I think he's just like, you look at him and now you're like, he's a genuinely good striker.
Yeah, he's a contender.
Knocking out Assunção is not just Assunção being old. It is partially Assunção, but just being old. But he's a genuinely well put together striker.
Yeah.
He can jab, he can counterpunch, he's actually really he's quite good.
He's vastly improved his striking defense, which he had none of before. Yeah, I thought he was going to top out as being like a Ray Borg level of striker. When Ray Borg, working with Brandon Gibson, and he got the hands, and then it was, it looked really impressive, sort of like how Jake Matthews looked really impressive in the right matchup. And then you saw him against a good striker, and you're like, oh, he's only got like 3 ideas. Ricky Simón is a tactically flexible striker. It's a good shout.
I just never would have thought of him as being that.
Mm-hmm.
But both of his last few performances have really been opening my eyes. I mean, I think he's really slept on in that division. So like a potential title challenger or potentially even champion.
Wow. Yeah, no, I totally agree. He looks phenomenal. We'll just give a little shine to the other people on this list. Again, this is my favorite thing in combat sports. So, Angela Hill, we've basically already touched on the summation of her improvements in that fight with Emily Ducote. Caitlin Chookagian, though, is another one who absolute lost cause. Not a bad fighter, as she was at all, but just making the small improvement of knowing when to plant her feet and actually throw with power. Staying in range long enough to put an actual combination together, it has made a huge difference. She's not going to be champion, but she is genuinely now a very tough gatekeeper to the elite of the division.
Yeah, I mean, she's pretty much she was the number 3 in that division after Andrade, but Andrade is going back down to 115, is she not?
Yeah, I think so.
That just basically means that she gets to be sort of the OB slash the Joe B / Robert Whittaker or whatever, for this division.
Mm-hmm. And who knows, if she gets lucky, the cards fall right, Valentina Shevchenko gets old overnight. After so long on top, maybe Chookagian can scrape a tough and probably not very fun fight out of her that she, a split decision kind of fight.
I think it's almost impossible, but
yeah, I agree.
I would find it very funny to see happen.
In a similar mold, Kai Kara-France, I don't think he's one that'll jump to many people's minds. He's clearly been quite a good fighter as long as he's been in the UFC and before. But like Caitlin Chookagian, I think what he has really learned is how to be mean and aggressive. Because this guy's a counterpuncher. That's what he likes to do. That's what he's comfortable with. And it has lost him fights before. I think you could argue it lost in the fight with Brandon Royval because he let Royval overwhelm him by just ceding the initiative. And you just can't always do that. Even as a counterpuncher, you're going to need to get the guy to create the openings you want. And if he's creating lots of openings, but also forcing you to give openings because he's doing so much, sometimes you can't, the countering's not working. You got to step in. You got to back him off. You have to get some respect. And Kai Kara-France has now done that several times, especially that Askarov fight, which is still a close scrape, but largely defined by Kara-France not being technically brilliant at it, but just being willing to wade forward and put hands on Askarov to keep him from getting comfortable in the pressuring role. That's a sort of an intangible but very significant improvement from him. And then
definitely, and he has, I think he's fighter like Drew Dober, who has gone from just being a annoying volume guy to being a genuine power threat.
Yeah, I mean, he was a sharp counterpuncher before, but yeah, it's like his opponents they have to be more afraid of him now. They don't get to suss out when the counters are coming, and you just can't get as comfortable against Kai Kara-France and build up to your winning game plan. He's going to be testing you the whole time. That's a very meaningful improvement. The last two we haven't mentioned, Eric Anders he's gotten kind of okay. Like, he throws combinations. Mostly 2 punches, but hey. he pressures, he hits the body a lot. He's just kind of like figured out how to establish a lead on the feet and mix in the wrestling.
He's still glacially slow, but he's managed to figure out how he can utilize the physical attributes that he does have.
Yes.
Namely, that he's very powerful and very big.
Yeah. Big, hits hard, strong as an ox. And it's like a gunboat. You just slowly trundle up to the guy and then just stay in front of him. What's he gonna do? And it's been working. And and honestly, it worked against Jun-Young Park. He probably did not deserve to lose that fight against a very good fighter in Park. And then finally, Jonathan Martinez, another subtle improvement. This is, Sam Hughes started from 0 and made huge strides. Jonathan Martinez was already a good fighter, but has kind of now figured out what he actually needs to do, like what his win condition is in a fight. And the main thing is, he's a kicker. He loves to fire kicks, and he does not like to be pressured. And both of those things point to, you should be more of a pressure fighter. Don't let people back you up in straight lines. And as long as you're going forward, it's much, much easier to use your best weapons. And, basically his last 3 fights, he has looked awesome. He has been, walking people down really consistently. When he does retreat, is forced to retreat, he has quickly come back with counters, to reassert himself. And he has been crushing people with the leg kicks, both Vince Morales and Cub Swanson. I found that Cub Swanson win to be super comprehensive and impressive by him. Yes, Cub's old, but Cub is not, he's not a lame duck. He has proven that. He's still a very tough fighter. And in order to take advantage of his maybe age and fragility, you need to still fight a careful, considered, and consistently aggressive fight. And I thought Martinez fought that one perfectly.
Yeah, both him and I think Gutierrez are well worth keeping eyes on. It's
Gutierrez is a good shout too, actually.
Yeah, it's like coherent, like genuine kickboxers in the division.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm pretty sure that is all we have for this year's edition of the Handies. A lot of awards.
Who won that award?
Oh my God. Who did win it? I don't know. Everyone? I'm so proud of them all. I'm so proud of you all, you know? Really. Do you have any pick? Does anyone stand out? Is it Ricky Simone? I think it's Ricky Simone.
I think it would be Ricky Simone for me.
He's got the advantage of being the most athletic of them all, but for that reason, he didn't actually have a super pressing need to make all these improvements, and he did it anyway.
And if I looked at Martinez or Gutierrez or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be he's going to be a really solid technician down the line. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm sure he is.
True.
But if you told me that about Ricky Simone back in the day, I would just be like, what?
Yeah.
Me what now?
Okay. Ricky Simone, but you all did great, and I'm proud of every one of you. And, you're all winners here. But it's Ricky. Okay, that's it for the 2022 Handies. I think we have successfully given out... Oh, actually, I'm looking at the numbers, Phil. We've only given out 2,021 Handies.
Oh my God.
Get Ben Cohn back in here. He keeps posting those shirtless pictures on Twitter trying to sell his beef jerky. Well, you got a customer here, pal. Come get your handy. Until Ben Cohn arrives, I have just texted him my address. That'll do it for this year's Handies and for this year. I mean, we have officially entered January of 2023, another year of incredibly stupid action in the UFC, MMA as a whole, boxing and kickboxing. But I think we did our best commemorating all of the best and most shameful moments of 2022. Anything else to say before we wrap up, Phil?
Not that I can think of. Just like, don't be too mean to us when you remember that we missed out some incredibly important title fight where someone did something really stupid.
Yeah. And just to keep in mind that we're very lazy.
Yes.
Be fair, you know? Okay. You came here for the finer points of face punching. You came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. Goodbye.
Hey, how you doing, man? Good, man. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I'd like to let you guys in tonight, but we got a dress code and no shoes and the gi.
Dude, but this is my cousin Halleck. He's always in the gi.
I understand, man. I'm sorry. We got a dress code.
I'm just a G and a gi, man.